Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another horrible case. The case of Whitney Heichel. On October 19, 2012, police discovered the body of 21-year-old Whitney Heichel. Her body was found about 40 minutes from her home in Gresham, Oregon, near a fire. Whitney had been missing since October 16. The last person to see her alive was her husband Clint Heichel, who saw her leave their apartment at 6:45 a.m. She kissed him goodbye and rushed to work for her 7 a.m. shift at a local Starbucks, but she never arrived for work. Clint became worried when he called Whitney's workplace to check on Whitney and see if she was okay. Her co-workers said that she hadn't come to work today, possibly because she was sick and decided to stay home. But Clint dismissed this idea. In the morning, Whitney felt fine and had come to work early in the morning. It was unusual for her not to be at work at this hour. She had never been late or missed a day before. And Clint also said that he couldn't reach her by phone. Sensing that something was wrong, he contacted the police around 10 a.m. that same morning. On the same day, police discovered that the Whitney's bank card had been used at a nearby gas station just hours after she went missing. Additionally, her black 1999 Ford Explorer was seen in the Walmart parking lot. What could have happened to her? Whitney was a hardworking, kind, and beautiful woman who was very religious and regularly attended her local church. She had strong relationships with her co-workers, family, friends, and neighbors. At the time she disappeared, she had been married to Clint for 9 months. They were a happy couple, and those close to them believed they had an ideal relationship. Whitney grew up with 6 siblings. Among her siblings, she was known for her determination and kindness. Clint appeared to be a very devoted husband. Friends and family found it hard to believe that someone so caring could harm Whitney. Many people in the community supported Clint, dismissing any accusations against him. The case sparked significant public interest. During a local media interview, Clint smiled while discussing his wife's disappearance, which raised suspicions among police. However, many interpreted this smile as a sign of nervousness. The police conducted a thorough investigation into Clint, but he had a solid alibi. He left the house shortly after his wife did. New information has surfaced indicating that Whitney's car was spotted near a Walmart on the outskirts of Gresham. Witnesses reported that a man was driving the car while Whitney was in the passenger seat. However, the witness could not provide a description of the driver or the condition of Whitney. Whitney's car was later found in the store's parking lot, with broken glass on the front passenger door. Signs of a struggle and blood were also discovered, and samples were sent to the lab for analysis. Unfortunately, the store's video surveillance cameras were positioned too far away to identify who was in the car. The only information obtained from the footage was that the car was left in the parking lot at 11 a.m. Efforts to locate additional witnesses who might have seen the car were unsuccessful. The police discovered information about a man in Whitney's car and started investigating who she might have been with. Whitney's family denied that she had a boyfriend. Her brothers were at work during that time, and none of her friends were with her in the car that morning. A search for Whitney was actively conducted in the area where she went missing, as well as in nearby forests and bodies of water. Unfortunately, her phone could not be tracked because it was likely turned off the day after her disappearance. On October 17, 2012, an important piece of evidence was found in the bushes near a service station, not far from the Walmart where her car was seen. A child discovered Whitney's mobile phone and gave it to some adults. When the police learned about this, they checked the phone and found it had been turned off the entire time, preventing them from tracking its location. The phone had dozens of missed calls and messages from her worried husband, along with calls from colleagues and other relatives. By this point, police were convinced that something terrible had happened to Whitney. Everyone who knew Whitney hoped she was safe, but police lost hope when they discovered blood in her car. Neighbors and church members joined in the search for her. Multiple search parties were quickly organized to comb the areas near Whitney's last known location. Meanwhile, police are reviewing the details of the incident and the information they have at the time. The recording did not provide any clues to identify the kidnapper, and there was no clear image of him on the surveillance camera. It appears that Whitney attempted to use her phone to call for help, but the attacker noticed and took the phone, possibly throwing it into the bushes where it was later found. Alternatively, he may have forced Whitney to throw it away in front of him, especially if he threatened her with a weapon. Additionally, the kidnapper did not contact anyone or demand ransom, suggesting that this was not a typical kidnapping for money. As time passed without Whitney being found, it is likely that she was murdered. The police started questioning residents of the apartment complex, including the Whitney's neighbors. Some residents were unaware that the Whitney was missing, while others expressed hope that she was safe and would return soon. Initially, nothing suspicious was discovered until the police spoke with one of the neighbors, Jonathan Holt. He had a close relationship with Clint and Whitney. In fact, Whitney's family gave Jonathan a key to their apartment so he could take care of their cats and plants while they were away. Just 2 weeks before Whitney went missing, Clint helped Jonathan start his motorcycle. Jonathan was involved in the search for Whitney after she went missing and offered support to her worried husband. As the police questioned Jonathan, he became increasingly nervous, leading to incoherent and confusing responses. The contradictions in his statements highlighted that he was inventing alibis on the spot. Initially, he claimed that he had been robbed that morning, but this turned out to be entirely false. When police inquired why he hadn't reported the robbery to the police, they found that his second alibi was also untrue. Police concluded that he had not been at work that day. Those who knew Jonathan, including Whitney's family, described him as a calm and friendly young man who had never caused any trouble. He was happily married, and police found no evidence of substance abuse or criminal behavior in his past. Jonathan was a good student, graduating from high school in 2006. 4 years later, he proposed to his girlfriend and she said yes. The couple initially lived in a nearby apartment complex before moving next door to Whitney's family just months before Whitney went missing. Jonathan recounted the events of that fateful morning. On the morning of October 16th, Whitney found Jonathan waiting for her outside her apartment. He had asked for a ride to work, and because they were close and trusted each other, she felt safe and agreed. Whitney was always willing to help others. They got into her car, and she started driving. About 5 minutes into the drive, Jonathan pulled out a 9mm pistol and pointed it at her, demanding that she take him to a secluded area near Lake Roslyn. Terrified, Whitney complied and stopped at the specified location. There, Jonathan attacked and raped her at gunpoint. The police later discovered the firearm nearby. After the attack, Jonathan feared that she would report him to the police, so he shot Whitney to avoid arrest. Jonathan threw away the gun, placed Whitney's body in the trunk of his car, and drove to a remote wooded area. He buried Whitney in the bushes and then drove to a Walmart parking lot. There, he parked his car in a secluded area, away from surveillance cameras. Subsequent investigation revealed that the blood found in the car was Whitney's. He then returned home, discarded his bloody clothes, and showered to remove any traces of gunpowder from his hands and the blood. According to police, the window had been intentionally broken to throw the investigation off track. The autopsy revealed that Jonathan had made no effort to conceal his evidence in the car. Several pieces of physical evidence were recovered, including DNA from both Whitney and Jonathan. Whitney was discovered on October 19th after the killer reported the crime and revealed the location. Her body showed signs of severe mutilation and gunshot wounds from close range. Additionally, there were indications of decomposition, which made the forensic investigation more challenging. The police had Jonathan's confession, strong DNA evidence linking him and the victim found in Whitney's car, Jonathan's fingerprints on the gun that shot Whitney, and his DNA on her body after the attack. All of this confirmed Jonathan's testimony. Whitney's husband Clint was devastated after his wife's death. He found it hard to believe that Jonathan, a family friend and neighbor, could commit such a terrible act against his wife. The police gathered sufficient evidence to charge Jonathan Holt with first-degree murder. He had already been arrested and was cooperative throughout the investigation, providing the police with all the necessary information. It appeared that he genuinely regretted his actions and felt a deep sense of guilt. An autopsy of Whitney's body confirmed that she died from gunshot wounds, with the Jonathan shooting her 4 times in the head. Experts stated that she died instantly. In court, a recording of the Jonathan's testimony was presented along with all the evidence against him. The lawyer argued that the Jonathan showed remorse for his actions and had confessed to the crime, which should warrant a lighter sentence. Jonathan expressed his sorrow to his family and friends for the loss of they. He explained his behavior as being because he had a secret crush on Whitney. Even though he was married, every time he met Whitney, he felt intense emotions, but she remained cold and indifferent. He eventually lost control when she rejected him. During the trial, Jonathan spoke about his actions. In front of everyone present, Jonathan admitted to first-degree murder, kidnapping, and rape of Whitney. During the court proceedings, the Jonathan mostly kept his head down, appearing guilty. He began to cry when the relatives of the Whitney shared how his actions impacted their lives, but he cried the hardest when her husband Clint spoke. He tried to look at Clint 3 times, but each time he quickly looked down. On July 8, 2013, Jonathan Holt was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The weekend following the trial, he was transferred to the Hammer County Detention Center in Noma County. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Diogo Goncalves. Albufeira, a beautiful resort town, is one of the most visited places in the Algarve region of southern Portugal. It was there, in 1999, that Diogo was born. He is the only child of a poor but hard-working family whose income mainly depended on the of tourism. Diogo's parents saw him as a good son, and those who knew him described him as decent, responsible, hardworking, and reliable. He was also a very outgoing young man who loved being surrounded by friends and family. Diogo went to high school in his hometown. After graduating, he started studying computer science. To fund his education and support his family, he got a job at McDonald's in 2015 when he was just 16. At 17, while still working there, his life became miserable when his father suffered a stroke and fell into a vegetative state, as reported by the media. That same year, while Diogo and his mother were dealing with his father's health crisis, another tragedy struck. His mother, who had always supported his learning and growth, was hit by a car on her way to work at the mall, where she cleaned. The car dragged her several meters, leading to her falling into a ditch where she died from her injuries. Although the driver fled, but the police identified him and he faced trial. While he was waiting for the conviction of the person responsible for his parents' suffering, Diogo needed to be transferred to a medical unit where he received the necessary care. His maternal aunt, worried about his situation, had suggested that he move in with her. However, they had a serious disagreement, and after a few weeks, it became impossible for them to continue living together. Diogo explained what was happening to his friend, who offered him a room in his house in the Aldeia neighborhood, also in Albufeira. At the time, the closeness to the friend's relatives helped Diogo feel at home. Despite his young age, Diogo demonstrated great ability to handle and overcome difficult situations with patience and optimism. In 2017, at just 18 years old, Diogo graduated with a degree in computer technology and completed a 6-month internship at Vila Vida Park, a leading 5-star hotel. His impressive work led the executives to offer him a position as a technician. In 2018, Diogo accepted the offer and left his job at a fast food restaurant chain, where he had worked for nearly a year and had become a duty manager. This thing a new chapter in his life, filled with opportunities to advance after overcoming difficult times. After working at the company for some time and anticipating better days ahead, he decided to buy a car. Diogo got along well with his co-workers, especially Maria Malvero, a 19-year-old security guard at the hotel. Maria, like Diogo, comes from a family with difficult circumstances and faces her own challenges. Her mother had mental health issues, and her father left when she was very young. She never spoke to him again. Maria, interested in martial arts, practiced karate and aspired to be a police officer. However, her application to the police academy was rejected due to her tattoo. Disappointed, she decided to study at Securinfo, a company that trains security guards in various private security fields. Diogo was interested in Maria and made his feelings known from the start, but she did not feel the same way and treated him coldly. Fabio Acosta, a close friend of Diogo, said that Diogo was deeply in love with Maria. He was so infatuated that he declined a well-paying job offer from the Sheraton hotel chain in Lisbon because he didn't want to be away from her. Additionally, he would bring her meals when she was working. Over time, they became very close, and people around them assumed they were a couple. However, there was no romantic relationship between them. Maria told Diogo she didn't want anything to do with him because she had just ended a toxic relationship with a naval officer, yet she was still giving him false hopes. Diogo never gave up hope for a future with Maria and sought opportunities to be near her and make her happy in various ways. One day, he was deeply disappointed when he saw a video on social media of Maria kissing another girl. Diogo was upset because he believed she should have told him that she wasn't interested in men and that this was why they could never be together. Fabio, Diogo's best friend, tried to reassure him by saying that girls often do this, but Diogo was not convinced. He insisted that she had lied to him and that was why she had rejected him. Despite the disappointment, Diogo and Maria stayed friends, and she continued to accept his gifts and invitations for dates. Several times, Diogo offered to walk her home, but she always said her roommate had a jealous boyfriend and she didn't want to bring another man into the apartment. As time went on, in December 2019, Diogo learned that he would finally receive compensation for his mother's death, which had occurred 3 years earlier. After receiving the payment amount of up to €70,000, Diogo decided it was time to buy a house to avoid continuing to pay rent. He shared the good news with his friend Maria, who left her job at the hotel a few weeks later. Maria stated that she could no longer stand the colleagues' comments about the relationship between her and Diogo. She also explained that she wanted to spend more time with her mother, who needed a lot of attention due to a mental illness. At that moment, there was no reason to doubt her words. However, subsequent incidents suggest that her decision to leave the hotel was motivated by dark reasons, and this is where the third character in the story, Mariana Fonseca, 20 years old, comes in. Mariana worked as a nurse at the hospital and had a dear relationship with Maria. They both lived together in Mariana's parents' house, because they still do not have enough money to have their own home where they could enjoy their relationship. When Maria discovered the substantial amount of money Diogo, she started getting closer to he. It seems Maria shared this information with Mariana, and they decide to trick Diogo in order to gain access to his bank account and steal the compensation money. After Maria repeatedly refused to date Diogo, one day, she told him she wanted to spend a romantic evening with him. This was a significant surprise for Diogo, who was overjoyed and couldn't believe his luck. After waiting for so long, he was ecstatic about finally being with the girl he loved. They planned the meeting for Friday evening, March 20th, 2020. Diogo was thrilled and didn't question why Maria had suddenly changed her mind. Maria and Mariana had different accounts of the incident that day, but here are the facts according to media reports based on official information. When Diogo entered, Maria offered him some orange juice she had brought. However, the drink contained an unexpected ingredient, diindawomethane, DIM, a drug affecting the central nervous system, with analgesic and sedative properties. Maria using the drug, which she had stolen from the hospital. Her plan was to sedate Diogo, access his banking information, and manipulate his fingers to unlock his phone. Mariana waited in a car outside while Maria executed the plan. Mariana even texted she several times to check if the drug had taken effect, as it was taking longer than expected. The situation inside the house became increasingly more tense. Diogo didn't understand what was happening and started to feel anxious. Maria then tries to calm him down by promising to show him an erotic dance, but first she has to tie him to a table. After being restrained for a few minutes, Diogo panicked and asked Maria to release him, but she became aggressive, leading to a struggle. Using her martial arts skills, she subdued Diogo by knocking him to the floor and choking him, prevent him from breathing. According to Mariana's testimony, Maria later instructed her to enter the apartment. Upon entering, Mariana found Diogo on the floor. She questioned Maria about the incident and criticized her for going beyond their plans, which was to steal his keys and take his money. Seeing Diogo unresponsive, Mariana began resuscitation efforts. When he woke up, he was extremely agitated and attempted to attack she. It seems he realized that Mariana was plotting against him, led him to try to defend himself. In response to Diogo's aggression towards Mariana, Maria intervened by grabbing him from behind, bringing him to the ground, and restraining him by squeezing his neck again. Diogo's life ended tragically at the hands of the girl he loved, Maria. His body was found in the living room of Maria and Mariana's house, where they continued with their planned robbery. They first severed his thumb and index finger to unlock his phone, access a mobile payment app, and transfer money. This process took several days because there was a limit on the amount that could be transferred each day. When he learned that Diogo had work scheduled the next day, Mariana and Maria tried to prevent his colleagues from noticing his absence, searching for him, and reporting him missing. One of Diogo's colleagues received a text from his number stating that he couldn't make it to work that day and needed someone to cover for him. Diogo's colleague, who disliked last-minute shift changes, found the request odd. Diogo asked if everything was okay and received a simple yes in response. The conversation among Diogo's co-worker and others continued throughout Friday and part of Saturday, but the unusual messages increasingly seemed uncharacteristic of him. One person receiving these messages was Diogo's supervisor. One message said that Diogo wouldn't be returning to work because he had met a woman in France and planned to move in with her. This explanation seemed odd to the supervisor because Diogo was a responsible employee and wouldn't leave his job so abruptly. To find the answer, the supervisor attempted to call Diogo but received no answer. Later, he got a message stating that Diogo was not in to talk on the phone. The supervisor responded, saying he could only feel reassured if they spoke. He wanted to hear Diogo's voice and wanted to know what was happening. Diogo's loved ones reacted to messages sent by Maria and Mariana, in which they pretended to be Diogo. This prompted they to alter their plan for explaining Diogo's sudden disappearance. They decided to make it appear as if Diogo had ended his life and planned to dismember his body to get rid of the evidence. Maria later mentioned that their actions were inspired by the TV show Dexter, featuring a forensic scientist who killed criminals and disguised his crimes by dismembering their bodies. After executing their horrific plan, Mariana and Maria placed Diogo's body in trash bags in the trunk of their car. They then went to an ATM and shopped at a mall, where they were seen hugging and laughing on security cameras. Following this, they returned to Mariana's home to begin dismembering Diogo's body. Ultimately, They put Diogo's torso in a black bag and discarded the other parts in a container. Meanwhile, Diogo's friends launched a campaign to report him as missing and reached out to the authorities. The authorities then waited the required 48 hours before officially declaring him missing. Mariana and Maria left the house, with Maria getting into Diogo's car to drive to a cliff near the Cabo de São Vicente lighthouse. Mariana followed behind in her own car. Around 2 p.m. that day, Mariana threw Diogo's torso off the cliff and abandoned his car nearby. They planned to make it seem like he had jumped voluntarily. However, instead of falling into the sea, the remains got stuck on a rock. Finally, Mariana and Maria drove together in Mariana's car for about 12 minutes, covering 7 kilometers, to the Inferno Dago waterfall in Tavira, where they disposed of the rest of Diogo's body in the water. Shortly after, Diogo's car was discovered in a parking lot near the Cabo de São Vicente lighthouse. A newspaper report stated that 2 laptops were found inside the car, led forensic police to investigate. A land and sea search was launched, leading to the discovery of a young man's torso partially covered by a black garbage bag. Meanwhile, at another location along the coast, a French couple found the young man's head at Inferno Toigo. Diogo's hands and feet were later recovered during an intensive police search. The investigators assigned to the case found the details surrounding Diogo's death unusual. They noted that he was a quiet man who don't hang out with bad people. As the police continued their investigation, they discovered that Diogo had received a significant payout following his mother's death. While examining money orders, they found that a large sum had been transferred from Diogo's account to someone named Maria. Naturally, the detectives' next move was to locate Maria to understand why she had received money from Diogo. Maria attempted to persuade the police that she killed Diogo in self-defense, claiming he was trying to abuse her. She stated that this was why she had left the hotel prior to the incident. However, a review of the text messages between Diogo and Maria, they showed that her claims were false. After Maria stopped working, she and Diogo grew close. During her initial meeting with the police, Maria insisted that she was entirely responsible for planning and carrying out the incident that led to the shooting. Maria clarified that Mariana was not involved in the crime at all. However, Mariana's account of the incident contradicted what Maria's claimed. Mariana reported that Maria to wanting to steal Diogo's money and intended to kill him. She stated that Maria's plan was to make him suffer in order to extract his bank account password. Investigators gathered enough evidence to convict both girls, Mariana and Maria, including phone records, the Diogo's cell phone, and ATM surveillance footage. Maria and Mariana were arrested on April 1, 2020, and faced court in June of that year. The judge carefully reviewed the incidents that Maria described. Maria remained steadfast in her confession and denied any involvement Mariana's. She stated that Diogo's body was in a suitcase in a car parked in the garage for 2 days, and it was there that the dismemberment took place, while Mariana's family was sleeping. After hearing Maria's detailed testimony about the incidents, the judge repeatedly asked her Mariana was during the dismemberment, as which had been done with surgical precision at the joints. All attention in the courtroom turned to the nurse, Mariana. She anticipated the questions and clarified that, since everyone was aware of her employment at the hospital, they mistakenly thought she was responsible for dismembering the corpse. She said that dismemberment could easily be done by using information on the internet. The judge imposed a detention order on both Mariana and Maria, citing that they had committed a serious crime in a creepy, calculated, reckless, and extremely brutal manner. A few months later, on February 24, 2021, the trial began. During her testimony on February 26, 2021, Maria claimed that she initially wanted revenge on Diogo because he had abused her, but did not intend to kill him. She admitted that her goal was to humiliate him and clarified that Mariana had no relationship with Diogo. Mariana and Maria attended court together but did not make eye contact during the trial. It is rumored that after the arrest and subsequent jail time, they decided to end their friendship. The trial included testimonies from several witnesses, including forensic expert Teresa Costa. She explained that the level of diphenhydramine found in Diogo's blood was much lower than expected from the 3 ampoules, suggesting that he either did not take the prescribed dose or had taken it many hours before his death. On April 27, 2021, the court delivered its verdict. Maria Malvero was convicted of several serious crimes, including aggravated murder, destroy the body, robbery, unauthorized access, fraud, carjacking, and possession of an illegal weapon. As a result, she received a 25-year prison sentence and was ordered to pay €265,000 in compensation to Diogo's father. Mariana Fonseca, on the other hand, was acquitted of murder but found guilty of destroy the body, complicity, and fraud. She received a 4-year prison sentence but was released because none of her convictions required pre-trial detention, at least until the final sentencing. The court determined that Mariana's effort to save life Diogo indicated that she did not intend to kill him. The judge based his decision on a confession from she, in which she accepted full responsibility for her actions. However, this verdict was not accepted by the Portuguese public, who viewed Mariana as equally guilty of the serious crime against Diogo alongside Maria. After the verdict, Mariana exited the courtroom through a separate exit where her father, who had attended all the hearings, was waiting. Neither of them spoke to the media. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Su Xinqi. On July 4, 2009, several lecturers from the finance department of a Chinese university gathered to work overtime to manage and monitor the school's finances and expenses from the previous semester. One lecturer, Tam Xingfai, 43, was scheduled to attend but was missing. At 11 a.m., a colleague named Ma tried to call Xingfai's cell phone but received no response. Despite the heavy workload, Ma was not too worried at first. He thought Xingfai might be taking care of his family's dog, which had a skin disease. Xingfai had planned to take the dog to the vet, so Ma assumed that was where he was. On July 5, the university's finance department held a meeting, but Xingfai failed to attend for the second time. Ma tried calling his cell phone again, but no one answered. Unfortunately, Ma did not have Xingfai's home phone number, so he could not contact him that way. By July 6, Xingfai had been absent from work for 2 days and had not contacted any of his colleagues. Eventually, one of his colleagues reported the situation to the finance department. Xingfai's supervisors had his home landline number, so they called there, but like his cell phone, no one answered. They called the library where his 33-year-old wife, Han Tong Yen, worked. Library staff confirmed that she had also been absent from work without permission. The couple lived in Zhongshan, Guangdong Province, China, and had been married for 11 years. They have 2 daughters, the eldest, Tam Hu-man, 10, and the youngest, Tam Hu-wing, 7. Despite their financial difficulties and living in an abandoned recycling station on Waju South Road, they are known to be kind, cheerful, and positive people with well-behaved children. Xingfai often takes his daughters into town to have fun, leading some to believe that the family went on vacation together. However, something unexpected happened that prevented them from returning home. His colleagues spent quite a while trying to contact him by calling both his cell phone and his home phone, hoping to reach him. Finally, someone answered, but instead of a family member, it was a middle-aged man who was a stranger. The man claimed to be Xingfai's cousin and said that the family had gone to Dongguan, Guangdong Province, China for the summer vacation. He said that Xingfai had entrusted his phone to him for safekeeping. When asked when the family would return to Hong Kong, the man could not answer. After repeated inquiries, he hung up and turned off the phone. This call only added to the suspicion and anxiety of his colleagues towards Xing Fai. Xing Fai was always hardworking and responsible, never missing work without a good reason. If he planned to go on vacation with his children, he would make sure their schools were notified in advance. In addition, his family kept 9 stray dogs, raising concerns about who would take care of them if they traveled to the mainland and how they would be able to afford the trip to China. Previously, Xing Fai lived with his parents. His father was a sailor and his mother worked at a paper mill. Unfortunately, his father went missing and was never found, which caused his mother to become ill and eventually end up in a nursing home. Xing Fai's abandonment of her was considered completely out of character for him, especially since he visited her every week. They eventually decided to contact the police. One of Xing Fai's co-workers led the police to Xing Fai's house, which was located at an abandoned recycling station in Pingqi village. During their journey, they saw a short man through the fence of Xing Fai's property. He quickly disappeared from sight, but they didn't think much of it and continued on. When they reached the gate of the house, they found that the door was locked. The police then inspected the property and interviewed the neighbors. The abandoned recycling station covers an area of nearly 450 square meters, of which only 90 square meters are built, leaving nearly 350 square meters as empty flower beds. The construction of the building was not permitted. The previous owner had built several corrugated iron sheds on the site for waste recycling. A stone house next door was used as a pig farm, and there were few residents in the area. As a result, the police were only able to question one neighbor, an elderly woman surnamed Wang, who lived alone across the street. She said she had lived in the area for a long time and was familiar with the family's routine, noting that they often spent their afternoons working in the garden. However, she had little information about their personal lives and commented that the family rarely had visitors due to the isolated nature of the site. The only relative who visited and contacted Xing Fai was Xing Fai's middle-aged cousin, Zhu Wang. Zhu Wang did not have much information about Xing Fai's family. He only knew that Xing Fai's cousin lived in a nearby stone house. Xing Fai's colleague informed the police that his call was answered by Zhu Wang, leading them to believe that he was the one on the other end of the line. However, Zhu Wang said that he did not know the address of Xing Fai or his cousin. Prior to these events, the police went to Xing Fai's house to investigate in Pingqi village. That same day, the police found a man at a stone house on Waju Road number 74. The man, Su Xingqi, 42, confirmed that he was Xing Fai's cousin. He said that he often went to Xing Fai's house to help with renovations and gardening. When asked about the phone call, he said that the family was in China for a vacation. On July 5, Xing Fai visited his mother at the nursing home. He then went home to tell Su about his plans to travel to Dongguan, China for a few days. Su explained that using Xing Fai's Hong Kong mobile phone in mainland China would incur high roaming charges, so he asked Su to keep the phone until he returned. The witness and Xing Fai's colleague who saw him running away was actually Zhu Wang, who had just finished feeding the family dog. Su appeared calm and there were no significant inconsistencies in his testimony. When the police asked Su if he had the keys to the family's house, he said no. The police continued to investigate the area. When the police questioned the villagers about Su, they discovered that he had been dishonest. Villagers confirmed that Su often went to the house to work and could open both the gate and the door himself, even when no one else was there. This suggested that he might have had a key to the house. In fact, he did have a key, as Zhu Wang saw Xing Fai hand the key to Su at the university office, asking Su to get the key for him. Later, when the police returned to Su's house to ask about the key, he denied having the key again. He claimed that he had used the spare key for renovations but had returned it, so he said he could not enter the house. During this interrogation, Sue seemed much more nervous than during the first interrogation, and he deliberately avoided important details. When the police threatened to search his house, Sue panicked and suddenly remembered that he actually had another house key that he had not returned. He then took the key from the closet and gave it to the police. Although Sue's behavior was suspicious, there was no concrete evidence linking him to the family's disappearance, so the police decided to keep an eye on him while they continued their investigation. They used a spare key to enter Xing Fai's home, where they found the interior in disarray, suggesting a break-in. The police also found some fresh blood stains on the walls, suggesting that someone had been murdered in the house. In the kitchen, they found a sink full of dirty dishes, which raised doubts about the idea that the family had traveled to China, as they would not have left the house in such a state. In the couple's master bedroom, the police discovered the family's identity cards in the wardrobe. The police contacted the border office and confirmed that the family had never left Hong Kong. As they continued their search, officers found a bloody shirt in the next room and a bloody plastic water pipe in the corner of the room. Police deployed sniffer dogs to collect more evidence and were able to locate the missing family. The dogs picked up a scent, leading them to bloodstains found under the freshly dug soil. In addition, despite it being summer vacation, the couple's two children, Hiu Man and Hiu Wing, had enrolled in summer school, indicating that the family was not on vacation. A special task force was therefore set up to investigate the case. Police sealed off the scene and blocked the entrances to Ping Chi village to outsiders while placing Su Xingqi under house arrest as the prime suspect. Su quickly confessed to the police. He revealed that he was from Huangpu in Guangdong province and usually lived with his sister, wife, and two sons, aged 15 and 16. He used to support himself by selling motorcycles in Junction City, but in 2006, Guangdong imposed a motorcycle ban, which led to a decline in sales. Faced with financial difficulties, he contacted Xing Fai in Hong Kong to seek help in finding a job in the city. Xing Fai helped Su get a construction job that paid 500 Hong Kong dollars a day, including food and accommodation. However, after working for 2 weeks, Su was unhappy because after deductions, he only received 220 Hong Kong dollars. Frustrated, he quit the job without notice and returned to China. In 2007, after Typhoon Pabuk severely damaged his house, Su returned to Hong Kong because the repair costs were too expensive. He asked Xing Fai to help him find another job in Hong Kong. When Xing Fai couldn't find another job, Su Xingqi offered to repair the house, do gardening, and do housework around Xing Fai's house. And Xing Fai would pay Su. Xing Fai agreed to the deal, so every 2 months, Su would come to Hong Kong to help with housework, mainly gardening and repairing the house. During this time, Su began to notice Helen Tong Yen, who was later discovered by Xing Fai. On July 3rd, Su arrived in Hong Kong. 2 days later, on July 5th, Xing Fai took Su to visit his mother at the nursing home. After the visit, Su sneaked out to go home first to harass Helen Tong Yen. However, Xing Fai came home earlier than expected and caught him. Enraged, Xing Fai rushed at Su. In a panic, Su grabbed a 25-centimeter-long fruit knife and stabbed Xing Fai, causing him to collapse in a pool of blood and die. Horrified by what he had just done, Su considered calling the police. However, he did not. Su then thought of a way to silence Xing Fai's wife, Helen Tong Yen, and prevent her from calling the police. Su grabbed some wire from the corner of the room and rushed towards her, knocking her to the ground and tying her hands behind her back. He then covered her mouth and nose with tape and put a plastic bag over her head. Meanwhile, the couple's 2 children were in the bedroom watching cartoons. Helen Tong Yen shouted for them to run away, but instead they ran towards her and found their father dead and Su attacking their mother. In fear, they ran back to their room, crying and locking the door. Since she was tied up, Sue left Helen Tong Yen behind and chased after the children. Hearing the noise, Hiu Man and Hiu Ying saw Sue holding a pair of pliers. He pried open the door and used more electric wires to attack both of them. He tied their hands behind their backs, taped their mouths and noses, and put plastic bags over their heads. After leaving the bedroom, he returned to find that both children had stopped breathing. Hiu Man and Hiu Ying suffocated shortly after. After killing the entire family, Sue was at a loss for what to do next. He returned home to think things over. He felt that hiding the bodies in a ditch or pond would be too easy to discover, and that dismembering them would be tiring and time-consuming. Instead, he decided to bury the bodies in their own home. On July 6th, he returned home to clean up as much blood as possible. He then dug a hole deep and wide enough to fit the bodies of the 4 family members and quickly placed them inside. He also threw the murder weapon into the hole before filling it up. Although he was skeptical of his motives, the police accepted the rest of his testimony. They took Sue back to the house, where he pointed out where a sharp knife, a water pipe, a pair of pliers, and other tools used in the crime were. The fire department was called to assist in exhuming the buried body. Firefighters arrived equipped with digging tools and gas masks, as the bodies were buried near a septic tank. They began digging but soon encountered a significant obstacle: they hit cement. Sue had left out a crucial detail in his confession, pouring cement before covering it up. The firefighters could not determine the thickness of the cement, and since the cement had hardened, their tools were ineffective. The police then hired a private engineering company, which brought in specialized equipment to drill through the concrete slab. When the team drilled into the hole and discovered human hair, they panicked and refused to continue, fearing that they might reach the body. It took the police 13 hours to persuade them to continue. After digging, the hole was 2.54 meters wide and 6 feet deep. They finally discovered the bodies of a family, all barefoot and wearing only t-shirts and shorts. At the bottom was Xing Fai's body, his hands and feet tied with electric wire, with multiple stab wounds to his stomach, back, and neck, and his clothes soaked in blood. Hiu Man and Hiu Ying's mouths and noses were taped, their hands and feet were tied, and the children's faces looked distorted. Helen Tong Yan's condition was similar. Her face was distorted, her hands and feet were tied, her mouth and nose were covered, and her eyes were covered with transparent tape. Su Xingqi was arrested, and during interrogation, he admitted that he had flirted with a woman. She felt uncomfortable and informed Xing Fai about the incident. Xing Fai becomes angry and kicks Su out of their home, forbidding him from returning. On July 3rd, Su returned home to start work, and his relationship with his cousin seemed to have improved. However, on July 4th, he again behaved inappropriately towards Helen Tong Yen. While Xing Fai was away, Su attempted to molest her. She escaped and locked herself in her room while calling for help. Not wanting to attract the attention of the neighbors, Su angrily left the house. On July 5th, Su and Xing Fai went to the nursing home, but he left first. Anticipating this, Xing Fai returned home early and found Su at his home and was trying to get in to talk to Helen Tong Yen. An argument ensued, and in the heat of the moment, Su stabbed Xing Fai. The rest of his confession was consistent with his initial statement but added the detail that he had filled the makeshift grave with cement. However, after the bodies were sent for autopsy, it became clear that Su's testimony was false. Xing Fai's murder was much more brutal than Su had claimed. Xing Fai had been stabbed 9 times in the head and neck, nearly 80 times in the body, and 10 times in the arms and legs. Instead of being suffocated with a plastic bag, he had been strangled. Forensic investigations showed that the cutlery and dishes in the house did not contain the family's DNA, but did contain Su's DNA. The weapon Su used was not a family kitchen knife, but a knife he owned. Furthermore, the cement used to bury the body had been purchased before the murder, suggesting that the crime was premeditated. Police discovered that bank cards had been used at ATMs after the time of death, but could not be withdrawn due to repeated incorrect PIN entries. In addition, the victim's cash and bank cards were missing, suggesting robbery as the motive behind the crime. Whenever the police pointed out inconsistencies in Su's testimony, he would quickly come up with another explanation. He claimed that his ancestral home in China needed urgent repairs while his 2 children were in school and he needed $100,000 in cash to pay for it. During his visits to Hong Kong, he did not earn much money, which prompted him to seek help from Xing Fai. Su believed that Xing Fai was actually rich but acted like a miser, and he thought that the low wages he received while working for Xing Fai were because they were exploiting him as cheap labor. On July 3, Su returned to Hong Kong alone without informing anyone. He waits until July 5, when Xing Fai has a day off from work. While Xing Fai is at the nursing home, Su, armed with a hidden knife, knocks on his door. When Xing Fai returns and finds Su there, he invites him to cook something while they talk. As soon as Su enters the kitchen, he suddenly asks to borrow 100,000 Hong Kong dollars. Xing Fai refuses and explains to Su that the money was for his mother's medical treatment and his children's education. Su does not want to accept this answer and accuses Xing Fai of just wanting to use him as cheap labor. This accusation angers Xing Fai, and when Su continues to press the issue, Xing Fai tells him to leave. As Xing Fai turns to leave, Su lunges at him, covering his mouth before stabbing him in the back. He then threatened Hiu Man and Hiu Ying, ransacked the house for cash and bank cards, and demanded the card passwords. Xing Fai pretended to provide a fake password, which Su did not realize was invalid at the time. Su also lied about strangling the others and claimed that he killed them by covering their mouths and noses with tape and putting plastic bags over their heads. When Su went to the nearest ATM, he discovered that he had been scammed because his PIN did not work. When he returned home, he discovered that people had suffocated while he was away. Seeing the food he had prepared, he decided to sit and eat next to the 4 corpses while thinking of what to do with them. After stealing 6,000 Hong Kong dollars from Xing Fai, he buried the corpses and the tools he used in a small hole before going to sleep at his stone house. The next morning, Su realized that the smell from the buried corpses might give them away. To prevent this, he went to buy cement, dug up the hole, poured cement in it, and covered it up. He decided to stay at home for a while to answer any calls to Xing Fai's cell phone or home phone, telling anyone who asked that he was keeping an eye on things while they were away on vacation. Su did not expect the deception to be discovered so quickly. Even then, he continued to lie about several details, including how he had purchased cement before the incident and the circumstances surrounding the victims' deaths. At that point, the police were no longer focused on obtaining a true confession, believing they had enough evidence to proceed. The trial took place in the Hong Kong High Court on October 28, 2010, where he pleaded not guilty. He claimed that his previous statement about having an affair with Helen Tong Yen was correct, asserting that he killed her in self-defense and that the deaths of Hiu Man and Hiu Ying were accidental. On November 23, the jury returned a verdict in which Su Xingqi was sentenced to life imprisonment for 3 counts of murder and 1 count of manslaughter. The judge declared that Su Xingqi had no conscience, was worse than an animal, and had no remorse. He accused Su of fabricating his self-defense testimony and his relationship with Helen Tong Yen, not to receive a lighter sentence, but simply to tarnish their reputations after death. Su Xingqi's family from Hong Kong defended him against Xing Fai's accusations, claiming that Xing Fai was a hypocrite and a real villain, using Su as cheap labor and taking a portion of his wages. This defense angered neighbors and residents of Ping Chi Village, forcing Sue's family to return to China to escape the negative backlash. The crime itself was one of the most shocking in Hong Kong's history. Tam Shing Fai's family received a significant outpouring of support, with many people visiting to offer their condolences and netizens donating enough money to pay for the funeral. In addition, the family's 9 stray dogs were adopted by another family and taken for a walk every July 5 near their old home. On August 9, 2022, Su Xingqi died of liver cancer at the age of 55 in Stanley Prison, Hong Kong. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Sophia McKenna. Sophia McKenna was born on March 7, 1996, in North Stonington, Connecticut. At the time of the incident, she was 21 years old and living in Groton, Connecticut. She was the daughter of Michelle from her first marriage and grew up with her brother, Justin, and her younger sister, Grace. Sophia was very caring towards her siblings, whom she loved dearly. As a child, she was happy and intelligent, showing unique qualities. She was active and full of energy, leading a vibrant and fulfilling life. However, her life was significantly affected by her parents' divorce when she was about 6 or 7 years old, which left her with a deep emotional scar. During high school, Sophia was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which contributed to her depression. This mental illness is marked by extreme mood swings, including episodes of mania or hypomania. Sophia faced emotional lows, characterized by sadness and melancholy, alternating with high-energy periods of euphoria. These mood swings affected her behavior and ability to think clearly. She received treatment, including medication and therapy, to help manage her symptoms, but there is no cure for bipolar disorder. This condition poses challenges for both Sophia and her family. It had a significant impact on her daily life, making her behavior unpredictable and her life chaotic, leading to unstable relationships. Those around her often exhibited complex behaviors as well. In 2015, Sophia met Austin, a bright and cheerful young man who quickly won her heart. He pursued Sophia with charm and determination, and they entered into a 3-year relationship. Unfortunately, this relationship was difficult for both Sophia and her mother, Michelle. Austin had some troubling behaviors. He was somewhat aggressive and used anabolic steroids for sports, which contributed to the instability of their relationship. The couple frequently argued and shouted at one another, sometimes escalating to physical confrontations. Sophia, who struggled with mental health issues, often initiated these conflicts. On multiple occasions, Austin's aggressive behavior resulted in injuries to Sophia, necessitating hospital visits. About a month before the incident, Sophia found out about Austin's cheating and decided to end their relationship. Despite this, they still met occasionally. While dealing with her emotions, Sophia focused on moving forward. She was a striking young woman and briefly worked as a model for a local jeans company, which helped her pay for her education. Eventually, she graduated as a massage therapist and got a job at an upscale spa called the Red Door, located in a luxury hotel. There, she met Spencer Mugford, a 20-year-old colleague. Spencer, originally from Florida, loved the sea and was an experienced swimmer working as a sailing instructor. He came from a caring family that had big hopes for his future. Spencer and Sophia quickly formed a close bond due to their shared interests and similar personalities. They reportedly dated for a while, but their families disapproved because the couple often found themselves in troublesome situations. Sophia's mother, Michelle, expressed deep concern for her daughter's well-being, particularly since Sophia continued to meet with her ex-boyfriend, Austin, and they frequently drank alcohol together, which had become a nearly daily habit. Ultimately, Sophia and Spencer decided to end their romantic relationship and remain friends. The exact reasons for this decision are unclear, but it seems that Sophia may have rekindled her relationship with Austin. Despite this, Sophia and Spencer continued to spend a lot of time together, both at work and outside of it, including on their last day together. On Saturday the 27th, Austin tried to reach her but didn't get any response. Initially, he wasn't too concerned because he knew Sophia often slept in. However, after several hours of trying to call and message her without success, he started to worry. He then reached out to Sophia's mother, Michelle, to check if Sophia had contacted her the night before. Michelle hadn't looked at her phone because her younger daughter had been using it all morning. When Michelle checked her phone, she saw that she had 7 missed calls from an unknown number. She decided to call back but only reached the voicemail of Spencer, boyfriend of her daughter's. This made her suspect that the calls might have been from Sophia. Michelle then tried to reach Sophia but got no answer. Feeling anxious, she and Austin started to search for Sophia. Austin called all the local hospitals, while Michelle reported Sophia as missing to the police. They contacted Spencer's family and found out that his relatives were also concerned because he hadn't arrived at an important family gathering and had not answered their calls. They went to Spencer's apartment but found no indication that he had been there. Spencer's father was worried because he knew his son had met with Sophia the night before, especially considering the problems she was dealing with. Spencer's mother mentioned that her son had said he planned to go fishing with a friend, but she suspected he was not truthful and actually intended to meet Sophia. She last spoke to him at 10 p.m. when he said goodnight. Concerned about his absence, Spencer's family reported both his and his girlfriend's disappearance to the police around 6:30 p.m. next day. The police started searching for them at that time. Austin reached out to the sheriff to share information about Sophia and Spencer's whereabouts the night before. He explained that he knew this because he had let Sophia go there. Austin also mentioned that he found a video Sophia posted on Snapchat the night before. In the video, which was recorded on Spencer's phone, they were on a boat heading towards the lighthouse. The footage showed a young man rowing towards the lighthouse, and it looked like they were having a good time. Later, Sophia uploaded a video to her Snapchat account. In the video, she was playfully posing with a concrete barrier and a lighthouse in the background, which had a "Do Not Cross" sign. What happened just minutes after this video remains a mystery. 5 minutes after posting the video at 2:05 a.m., Spencer's mobile phone made its first call to Michelle, Sophia's mother. This was followed by 3 more calls at 2:06, 2:08, and the last call at 2:09. Michelle, who was asleep at the time, did not answer any of these calls. No voicemails or text messages were left, and 911 did not receive any calls from that number that night. The photos and videos shared by them verified their presence at the lighthouse. Consequently, the police quickly sent 20 Coast Guard units to the location. Searches were carried out by the Coast Guard, firefighters, and police using air, sea, and land methods. The police made their first significant find: Sophia's car parked on the university campus, along with her cell phone inside it. Simultaneously, on that same night, the Coast Guard found a T-shirt that Spencer had worn in the video. The police theorized that Spencer may have used it to tie the boat to the shore. The search went on through the night and into the next day. Soon after, a storm hit and state authorities decided to suspend the search for them until new clues or signs of their possible location emerged. This decision left their families and friends devastated, but they didn't give up. They continued searching on their own, putting up pictures and sharing information about Spencer and Sophia's disappearance all over the city. They urged the public to report any information they might have. However, despite many people being in the area when the young people went missing, no witnesses came forward. The families' searches continued for several days, but all questions remained unanswered. What happened? Why did Sophia repeatedly call her mother? Why didn't she leave a voicemail or call the police? There were many speculations and assumptions. Could they have consumed something illicit? Indeed, Sophia and Spencer had broken the law by stealing a boat from the campus and heading to the lighthouse without permission. It's likely Sophia feared they could be held accountable and thus chose not to contact the police. A few days prior, she and Spencer had already had legal issues. Spencer had been detained for driving under the influence, and Sophia had faced charges for aggressive behavior. Perhaps for this reason, she preferred to contact her mother rather than the police. However, it's unknown what other circumstances were present in Sophia's life at that moment. She might have been in a state of panic and unable to think clearly. Everyone's reaction to such situations can be unpredictable. On May 26, 2018, detectives worked to piece together the day's events. It started as a typical sunny and warm day, with the weekend ahead promising fun as the city prepared for Memorial Day celebrations. Sophia had the day off, while Spencer was scheduled to work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Once he finished his shift, the couple planned to meet and join in the festivities. They looked forward to spending the rest of the day together, including a visit to the famous lighthouse known for its paranormal happenings, which they were excited to explore. What happened after Spencer's shift is unclear. We don't know where he went, if he met anyone, or whether he had been drinking. However, we do know that Sophia parked her car at the University of Connecticut campus around 2 a.m. She left her cell phone in the car, possibly because she forgot it or it was out of charge. They then took an illegal sailboat that had no motor, weighed 14 pounds, and was only equipped with oars. They pushed the boat into the water and headed towards the lighthouse, navigating along the rocky shores. This was a dangerous situation because the boat didn't have any safety equipment. They probably felt confident taking this risk due to Spencer's swimming and boating skills, which he had had since childhood. The investigators were only able to collect limited information about the events of that night. On Monday evening, while searching from a helicopter, the police spotted a white and blue sailboat stuck on the rocks, covered in dust. This boat was found 12 kilometers west of the lighthouse. Police reports suggest this could be the same boat that went missing from the campus and might have been used by Spencer and Sophia, but this remains unconfirmed. Fingerprints were discovered on the boat, but they were never analyzed, and the results were not made public to confirm whether they matched those of the young couple. Additionally, there was confusion about the type of boat involved. It was first described as a kayak, but later reports indicated it was a white sailboat with red markings. On June 8, 2018, fishermen on a commercial vessel near the Long Island Straits spotted something unusual in the water. Upon closer inspection, they realized it was a man's body. They promptly reported their find to the Coast Guard. When police arrived, they retrieved the body of a young man from the shore. They observed unexplained bruises and abrasions on the body, which was later identified as Spencer Mugford. He had been reported missing a few days earlier, along with his girlfriend, Sophia McKenna. To investigate the cause of Spencer's death, his body was sent for examination. The autopsy results confirmed that drowning was the cause of death, with no evidence of violence and all injuries linked to water. However, the specific details of the autopsy were not made public. During the same weekend that Spencer and his girlfriend went missing, 2 other men also disappeared in the area, and their bodies were later discovered, also having drowned. Initially, the police viewed these incidents as tragic accidents caused by unfortunate circumstances, and they did not explore any other theories at that time. Unfortunately, Spencer's girlfriend, Sophia McKenna, was never found. After several days of searching, fishermen discovered Spencer's body, leading his family to publish an obituary in the local media. In contrast, Sophia's family also wrote an obituary but remained hopeful for her return and continued to actively search for her. They frequently tried to recall the events leading up to her disappearance, trying to reconstruct what the young people did that evening and whether they interacted with anyone that night. Unfortunately, no new information surfaced. It remained unclear whether there were any calls made from Spencer's phone besides those to Michelle, as his mobile device was never found, and the police did not provide cell phone records. Moreover, the cameras at both the lighthouse and the campus were reportedly malfunctioning, resulting in no video footage from that night. It was also revealed that authorities had not checked the lighthouse, which should have been done immediately after the couple went missing. In July 2018, Sophia McKenna's family created a Facebook page named Searching for Sophia McKenna to keep awareness of her case alive. The page was used to share updates, brochures, and requests for information from the public. A few weeks after Sophia went missing, a concerning incident occurred. Michelle received a message from Sophia's social media account asking for money. Since Sophia's phone was with the police, this message raised suspicions of possible hacking. The investigations into Spencer's death and Sophia's disappearance reached a standstill, with police providing no definitive answers. Meanwhile, various unofficial theories about the case circulated. One theory suggested that Austin, Sophia's ex-boyfriend, may have been involved in their disappearance, with some speculating that he could have harmed Sophia and received help from his friends in disposing of Spencer's body. Sophia and Austin had a rocky relationship characterized by frequent fights and physical confrontations, which became a topic of public gossip. Michelle, Sophia's mother, saw many of their arguments firsthand. A month before Sophia went missing, serious problems emerged after she discovered Austin was cheating on May 8, 2018, which led her to break up with him. In what could have been a revenge move or a fresh start, Sophia started dating another guy and brought him to her apartment. This angered Austin, who stormed over and began banging and kicking the door while shouting insults at Sophia. After around 15 minutes of quiet, Sophia thought Austin had left and opened the door, but he was still there and tried to push his way inside. Luckily, Sophia quickly managed to shut the door again. Neighbors reported hearing him threaten to harm Sophia if she didn't open it. By the time the police and Michelle arrived, Austin had been arrested. The following day, May 9th, a court order came into effect. In her statement, Sophia detailed earlier attacks by Austin and included photos of her injuries. She expressed that she was afraid for her life because he was stalking her. A restraining order was issued, preventing Austin from being in the same area as Sophia. However, Sophia later felt guilty about the situation, and the restrictions were changed. Now, Austin was only barred from being in the same apartment as her. The man who was with Sophia at the time did not reveal his identity and initially did not cooperate with the police. Michelle initially claimed that it was Spencer with Sophia, but later changed her statement. However, a colleague whom Sophia trusted confirmed that it was indeed Spencer. Colleagues of Sophia and Spencer stated that they were in a relationship at the time of their disappearance and acted like a couple both at work and outside of it. Witnesses reported an incident at the hotel where Sophia's ex, Austin, confronted her at her workplace and threatened her publicly. Despite this, Austin and his father joined the search for the missing couple, using a private helicopter and distributing flyers with their images throughout the city. Austin claimed on social media that Sophia had been his girlfriend for 3 years and insisted she had only a platonic friendship with Spencer. Many found this post strange, as it seemed to focus more on his relationship with Sophia than on her disappearance. On July 10th, Sophia's family and friends held a memorial for her. Austin attended the event with Michelle and later shared a now-deleted message online saying, "Rest in peace, baby, we'll see each other soon." These actions raised concerns among people who knew them. Austin told the police that he spent the entire day with Sophia on May 26th and that they continued to meet despite a court order, even making plans for the following day. A friend of Austin mentioned that around 3 a.m. on the night of the incident, Austin texted Sophia saying he was at the gym with a friend. However, this claim seems questionable since gyms are closed at that hour. His family asserted he was home before leaving for the gym. An anonymous witness stated that Austin and his brother were invited to a party that day. Although Austin initially planned to attend, he later texted that he was tired and would not go. This situation raises concerns about Austin's location when Sophia and Spencer went missing, and there are no clear answers regarding his whereabouts. Austin's friends describe him as moody, which may be intensified by steroid use. There were rumors about Austin, his brother, and a friend having ties to the local police. Furthermore, a woman related to Austin was reportedly married to the police chief who was looking into Sophia's case and had faced complaints of police violence. However, the trustworthiness of these claims, made by a friend of Austin with a criminal history, is questionable. The day after these rumors circulated, a YouTube channel focused on disappearances in Long Island uploaded a video about Sophia. After that, Austin deleted all of their photos together from his social media, leading to confusion, especially since Sophia's fate was still unknown. One theory suggests that Austin had started dating someone new and wanted to avoid complications. However, it seemed odd that he removed all photos of Sophia. Additionally, shortly after Sophia went missing, Austin became noticeably less involved in the search efforts. When he met with investigators, he seemed calm and collected, showing no visible signs of distress over the loss of someone important. However, this alone is not enough to make any accusations against Austin, as people have different ways of responding to stress. One theory proposes that Sophia was murdered to stop her from testifying against Austin in a domestic violence case. If she hadn't spoken, there would not have been enough evidence to proceed, possibly leading to the case being dismissed. This scenario occurred in the summer of 2018 when the charges against Austin were dropped. It's crucial to mention that Austin is not formally considered a suspect. This theory is speculative, and the investigation is ongoing. Another theory suggests that Sophia and Spencer might have encountered dangerous people at the lighthouse. It was a busy holiday, but witnesses either failed to remember them or deemed the information unimportant, resulting in no reports made to the police. Sophia's mother suspected that her daughter could have been kidnapped or trafficked, but there is no evidence or ransom requests to back this up. The police also looked into the possibility of an accident caused by poor judgment. The young couple took an unprepared boat without life jackets into strong currents. After reaching the lighthouse, they secured the boat with Spencer's T-shirt and took some photos, only to discover that the boat had drifted away. Spencer, relying on his swimming skills, may have underestimated the cold temperature of the water. The darkness could have distorted his perception of distance, making the boat seem closer than it actually was. Exhausted from his workday and the swim to the lighthouse, Spencer might have drowned. Sophia realized she couldn't see or hear Spencer, so she attempted to call her mother for help. In her desperation, she might have jumped in to save Spencer and ended up drowning herself. Although Sophia was not a strong swimmer, alcohol could have influenced her to make a poor decision. Alternatively, she may have been walking along the narrow ledge of the lighthouse, trying to find Spencer, when she stumbled and fell while holding her phone. If that happened, she could have been swept away by the current and drowned. These possibilities are still considered, but other theories exist as well. None are formally recognized, and there are no suspects or culprits identified. Most of this information circulates on social media. Sophia's family and friends are still searching for her, determined to find out what happened and where she might be. In 2019, an independent detective discovered several bones near the shore and quickly reported them to the police. However, when investigators arrived, they concluded that the bones were from animals. The remains were never collected, and due to high costs, no forensic tests were performed to check if they were human. There are many troubling aspects of this case that deserve a deeper investigation. After all, it involves a missing person whose family is in distress, desperately seeking answers. Sophia deserves ongoing search efforts. While other bodies of missing individuals have been found in these waters, Sophia's has not. There have been no new developments in her case, and the mystery of what occurred that night at the lighthouse remains unresolved. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Inman family. William Inman and Sandra's story began in 1983 when they met at church. He was 18 and she was 16. With their parents' approval, they quickly got married and moved to Logan, Ohio. William was a devoted religious man who worked as a builder. In his free time, he volunteered at the Evangelical Church of the Tabernacle of Faith near Nelson Villa, where he played musical instruments. Meanwhile, Sandra, as a housewife, supported her husband's spiritual activities. In 1984, the couple had their first child, a son named William Jr. To prevent any confusion, the church community referred to the father as Bill and the son as Will. Over the years, Will grew up. In 2001, at the age of 17, he met 15-year-old Summer Cook at a church service. Their meeting was strikingly similar to the love story of Bill and Sandra. The young couple dated for 3 years, and in 2004, after Summer turned 18, they got married. They quickly settled into Will's parents' large house in Logan. In the same year, 39-year-old Bill Inman declared himself a spiritual leader and turned his garage into a temporary church, where he started holding services. Although local residents were initially skeptical of him as a self-proclaimed pastor, his church began to gather followers. It started with neighbors and gradually expanded to their acquaintances. People were drawn there to pray, seek comfort, and make donations. In 2005, Will and Summer joyfully welcomed a son named Alex. However, they soon encountered financial challenges. Will's work at the church did not provide enough income, so the family chose to seek better opportunities in another state. In 2006, the Inman family relocated to Florida. They soon found jobs in the construction industry, building hotels in their new location. Meanwhile, Sandra and Summer looked after their home and raised little Alex. After 2 years, however, they missed their hometown and decided to return to Ohio. Unfortunately, they had lost the right to repurchase their previous house in Logan while they were away, so they had to rent a different place in rural Vinton. In 2008, shortly after returning, Will and Summer welcomed their second child, a daughter named Kale. 2 years later, they had their third child, another daughter named Alana. Despite the difficulties of raising young children, Will and Summer made an effort to carve out time for themselves. Almost every weekend, they entrusted their kids to Bill and Sandra, who happily embraced their roles as grandparents. For this elderly couple, their grandchildren brought immense joy and purpose to their lives. In the spring of 2010, Bill Inman was officially appointed as a pastor of the Church of the Tabernacle of Faith. Alongside his wife, he established a charitable organization named Ranch of Mercy, which was created to assist those in need, particularly people who had lost their jobs or homes. Bill had a vision of constructing a large shelter for orphans and widows, intending to build it himself. Unfortunately, he faced challenges due to insufficient funding to make this dream a reality. Bill proposed holding a lottery to raise funds. He planned to sell tickets for $10 each to reach his financial goal. The winner will receive either a new house or $200,000. Bill also promised to give away 99 other valuable prizes in a raffle. Information about the lottery was shared through local media and advertising. Bill went door to door, encouraging people to support the cause by buying tickets, assuring them that the money raised would be used to build a shelter for those in need. In total, Inman sold 100,000 tickets and raised $1 million. The prize draw is set for September 2010. While Bill was busy with charity work, issues were developing in the Inman family. In June 2010, Summer informed her husband that she wanted a divorce after 6 years of marriage. Before this conversation, she had written a painful entry in her diary, expressing that she was very tired of trying to please everyone and felt exhausted. She questioned whether she deserved happiness and if she had the right to fall in love again and feel loved in return. She acknowledged that it might not be the best time, but she felt the need to tell Will the truth, believing he deserved to know that she did not want to be with him anymore. She mentioned that she needed time alone to figure out who she really was, as she felt like she was just following orders at that moment. Summer emphasized her love for her children, stating that she wouldn't trade them for the world, but she did not want them to see their mother merely obeying someone else. She expressed uncertainty about how Will would react, fearing that he might get angry, try to take the kids, or even threaten her. She believed they should share equal time with the children, but she knew his parents would oppose this and try to persuade her to stay, although she realized that wouldn't change anything. She also recounted that yesterday, Will had asked her what she wanted, but she couldn't answer because all she knew was what she didn't want, to be unhappy and feel trapped. Yet, she remained silent every day, saying that all she could do was cry and sleep. She admitted that she just didn't know how to escape the situation and make everything right, hoping that when she wrote again, she would have found the answer. Summer filed for divorce and moved out of the Inman's house with the children and essential belongings to her parents' home. She wanted to ensure that Alex, Kale, and Alana could still communicate with their father, so she allowed them to visit Will and his parents. 2 months after leaving her husband, Summer began a relationship with Adam Peters. At the same time, she took a job as a cleaner at a bank in downtown Logan, as she had no formal education and struggled to find other employment. Meanwhile, September and October passed, but the drawing that Bill from Ranch of Mercy had promised never took place. It also became clear that construction on the prize house hadn't even started, and the Bill family was slow to refund people's money for the tickets. In early December 2010, the Inmans received notice that they needed to leave their rented home due to unpaid debts. After this news, Summer, accompanied by Adam, went to collect their belongings. However, Will and his parents refused to let her in. Summer called the police, claiming that Will was threatening her and wouldn't return her personal items. When officers arrived, Will continued to deny entry. He threatened to shoot Adam, and even got into a confrontation with a police officer. In her statement, Summer explained that before their wedding, she and Will appeared to have a perfect relationship, but everything changed after they married. Will became controlling and jealous, making unfounded accusations. He dictated her actions and invaded her privacy, affecting her eating habits, household responsibilities, and even their sexual relationship. Summer was so restricted that she couldn't sleep without his permission. He essentially kept her confined to the house and took away her phone and keys. She revealed that Will had always wanted to have 12 children with her and had even considered marrying a second wife. He frequently visited websites for polygamous families, where he shared explicit photos. Will also threatened to kill Summer if she tried to leave him. At one point, he took her cherished cats, drove them far away, and then lied, saying they had escaped through an open window, laughing and claiming she would never see them again. After Summer accused him of wrongdoing, Will attempted to defend his actions by saying he took her phone and keys because he thought she was being unfaithful. Regarding the cats, he claimed he took them to a shelter because they were scratching the furniture and being aggressive to family members. Eventually, Will was ordered to stay away from Summer, and he received a fine and probation for his actions. A custody battle began between the two families. The Inmans reported to the police that Adam Peters posed a danger to Alex, Kaylee, and Alana. A frightening incident occurred late on the night of March 22, 2011. 25-year-old Summer was finishing her shift at the bank. As usual, she cleaned up her workspace and went outside around 11 p.m. to take out the trash. Before leaving, Summer had sent a message to Adam, whom she was supposed to meet after work, but he never saw her again. Concerned, Adam went to the bank after midnight. He couldn't find Summer, but near the trash can he discovered her belongings, her phone, keys, and a running music player with headphones on. A little further away, he found her jacket in the bushes. Adam called the police and notified Summer's parents about her disappearance. Initially, the family thought that she might have been late from work or misplaced her belongings. However, the bank security service informed them that she hadn't been seen since her shift ended. When the police arrived, several witnesses were already present. 2 women jogging nearby reported that they had seen Summer being kidnapped about an hour earlier. They explained that as Summer approached a dumpster, a Ford Crown Victoria, driven by a blonde woman, pulled up. 2 men wearing black balaclavas exited the vehicle, grabbed Summer, and forced her into the back seat. Despite her attempts to resist, scream, and plead for help, one of the witnesses who tried to intervene was met with pepper spray from the female driver. The kidnappers then drove away with Summer. The 2 women rushed to the nearest police station to report the incident, but for some reason, law enforcement was skeptical and even suspicious of their account, suspecting they might have fabricated the story for amusement. A whole hour had passed after Summer's parents called the police before they finally arrived at the crime scene. Unfortunately, by that time, it was too late for them to find Summer while the trail was still fresh. News of the abduction of 25-year-old Summer Inman quickly spread through local media. Hundreds of residents of Logan joined the search effort, but as days went by, hope of finding her alive began to fade. Summer's parents struggled to keep their thoughts away from the worst possible outcome. A few weeks prior to the tragedy, Summer had posted a picture on Facebook with Adam and the children, depicting what appeared to be a happy family. This photo infuriated Will Inman, Summer's husband. It had been revealed that Summer met Adam before deciding to divorce Will. In the spring of 2010, Adam started working for the Inmans, maintaining their house and yard, and he soon developed feelings for Summer. Initially, she rejected his advances, but eventually, she gave in. In her diary, she reflected on that moment, expressing that when their eyes met, she realized she had let the devil take hold of her and ignored the warnings from God. She mentioned that she tried to walk away, with her mind screaming to run, but she stayed and allowed Adam to embrace her, expressing her regret and guilt. Meeting Adam marked the beginning of the end for Summer and Will's marriage, as she realized that she wanted to pursue happiness, love, and to be loved, which ultimately led her to file for divorce. 5 days before Summer disappeared, Will attempted to challenge the alimony payments in court. He wanted to reduce the amount he had to pay his ex-wife from $150 per child each month to $50, as his annual income was only $6,500. Will, along with his parents, sought sole custody of the children, but the judge denied their request. Bill and Sandra deeply missed their grandchildren, who were the center of their lives. Since separating from Summer, the elderly couple had visibly lost weight and appeared weary. In March 2011, shortly after Summer went missing, the police found the Inman family, Bill, Sandra, and Will, were hiding in Bill's mother's house in Jackson County, Ohio. During questioning, all 3 of them consistently denied any involvement in Summer's disappearance. They explained that on the night she vanished, they had traveled to Cleveland to look at a new house. However, their car broke down, and they spent the entire night trying to fix it on the side of the road. They returned home to Logan the following morning. The Inmans stated that they had always treated Summer well and rarely had conflicts with her. However, they noted that after Adam Peters came into their lives, things took a turn for the worse. Bill, Sandra, and Will described Adam as a negative influence who had ruined their previously happy family. The police took an interest in a white Ford Crown Victoria that was parked near the Inman's house. They seized the car's GPS navigator and examined its route. They discovered that on the afternoon of March 22, when the kidnapping took place, the car was in Logan. The GPS was turned off at 5:30 p.m. that evening and only activated again the following morning, March 23, still in Logan. There was no evidence that the Inman family ever came to Cleveland. Additionally, phone records indicated that the suspects remained in Logan throughout the night from March 22 to March 23. On the morning of March 23 at 7:30 a.m., Bill, Sandra, and Will were seen at a car wash, where they had the car thoroughly cleaned inside. Summer was not with them. Afterward, the Inmans traveled to Cleveland, where they changed the tires at an auto repair shop. The mechanic found it unusual that Bill chose to replace nearly new tires with older ones. Additionally, the Inmans attempted to alter the car's appearance, and Bill removed a spotlight that he had previously installed near the side mirror. After the arrest, Bill attempted to reassure his elderly mother that they were innocent and that the trials they faced were a form of divine punishment. However, after several hours of intense questioning and realizing that all three could face the death penalty, Sandra eventually broke down. She confessed that they were responsible for the kidnapping of Summer on that tragic night. The men wearing balaclavas were identified as her husband, Bill, and her son, Will. Sandra explained that the abduction was entirely her idea. She intended to scare her daughter-in-law into allowing Will to see their children, but things quickly spiraled out of control. She stated that Will would admit to guilt for both murder and kidnapping. Sandra acknowledged that it was her idea to take Summer, explaining that she believed this would frighten her. Will tied Summer's hands, feet, and neck with plastic ties. Summer struggled and screamed, but then suddenly lost consciousness. Upon noticing that she was unresponsive, Will panicked and wanted to cut her free. He called out to his mother, asking where the knife was because he couldn't find it. As the family desperately searched for the knife, precious minutes passed. It was too late, and Summer had suffocated. Sandra insisted that they never intended to harm their daughter-in-law. Their goal was simply to scare her in order to resolve a custody dispute over the grandchildren so they could see them on weekends. On March 29, 2011, 1 week after the abduction, Sandra revealed the location where they had hidden the body. Summer was placed in an abandoned well on the property of the church that the Inman family attended, known as the Church of the Tabernacle of Faith, which is situated near Nelsonville, 30 kilometers from the bank where Summer worked. Bill Inman had previously helped build this church, and 28 years ago, he and Sandra got married there under its arches. When the police removed the concrete lid from the well, they discovered a disturbing scene. Summer was at the bottom, her body positioned head first. She was dressed in the same outfit she had worn on her last day, a black t-shirt that read, "I don't have an anger problem, I have an idiot problem." The autopsy revealed that Summer had died from strangulation. Besides the marks left by plastic ties on her neck, wrists, and ankles, there were no other injuries on her body. Sandra originally intended to dispose of the body in the river. However, she later thought the church well would be a safer place where it wouldn't be discovered. She confessed to her crime and showed genuine remorse for her actions. The trial soon followed. Bill, 49, and Will, 28, both pleaded not guilty to Summer's murder. Throughout the hearings, they spoke very little and avoided making eye contact with her parents. In contrast, Sandra took full responsibility for the crime, reiterating that the abduction was her idea. As she delivered her final statement, the woman tearfully pleaded for forgiveness from Summer's parents. Overwhelmed with emotion, Sandra clearly expressed her deep regret for the tragic events. "Summer was like a daughter to me," she cried. "If I could turn back time, I would never have made this terrible choice." In 2012, the court sentenced Bill and Will Inman to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Sandra received a life sentence but is eligible for parole after 15 years. The church friends and parishioners all agreed that Bill was the one controlling everything in the Inman family. He made all the decisions. No one thought that the idea of the kidnapping came from Sandra. It was well known that Will had been spoiled as a child, with his parents giving in to his every demand. Sandra realized that both her husband and son were as guilty as she was, but she continued to plead guilty, hoping that it would lessen the consequences for them. Alex, Cale, and Alana were cared for by the parents of Summer, who had passed away for an extended period. They struggled to explain to their grandchildren the absence of their mother, father, grandmother, and grandfather. The tragic story of the Inman family highlights how concealed anger, jealousy, and a need to control others can result in devastating outcomes. Bill and Sandra, who appeared to embody piety and strong family values to everyone, revealed themselves to be oppressive figures to their daughter-in-law. Summer found herself trapped in a toxic relationship that stifled her will and desires. Her efforts to escape ultimately cost her life. Will, who was raised in this oppressive environment, became selfish and resistant to compromise. His obsession with reclaiming his wife and children at any price ultimately led to his downfall. The terrible crime committed by the Inman's family shattered multiple families, leaving 3 young children without their mother and a grandfather and grandmother without their beloved family member. This story highlights the importance of letting go of grudges, respecting others' boundaries, and building relationships based on trust and respect. Holding on to anger can eventually lead to outbursts that damage the most valuable aspects of our lives. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Kelly Cochran. Christopher Reagan grew up in Detroit, Michigan, where he received his education. At 20, he decided to serve his country and join the military. He was stationed at a base near Marquette, where he met Terry, a young teacher from Iron River. They became friends, bonding over their shared values and interests. Their friendship grew into a close relationship, but Christopher's military service didn't allow for a romantic relationship. When he left the military, he moved to Traverse City, but the distance didn't weaken their bond. In 2012, Christopher proposed a long-distance romantic relationship, and Terry agreed. They shared many common interests, including a love of nature and a desire for a peaceful lifestyle. They decided to live together in Iron River, where Christopher found a job at a factory. However, after 2 years, their passion faded and they parted ways amicably. Christopher moved out and began looking for a new place to live. He found a job in Asheville, North Carolina, and started a new chapter in his life. On October 14th, he told Terry he had taken the day off and suggested they meet up the next day for a walk. However, he failed to contact her the next day, and Terry became worried. After trying to reach him for several days, Terry filed a police report about Christopher's disappearance. The police reassured her that people sometimes disappear and then return, but Terry was concerned. At the police station, Terry told investigators that Christopher had recently received a job offer in North Carolina and might have started a new life, cutting ties with his past. However, to avoid speculation, a detailed investigation was launched. The police identified the company where Christopher had started working and contacted an employee, but surprisingly, no information about Christopher could be obtained, as he hadn't shown up to work in 10 days. Search efforts were then focused on the local woods, where Christopher often took solo trips with specially trained dogs deployed to aid in the search. Unfortunately, no trace of him was found. Terry suggested searching Christopher's former apartment to rule out any accidents or potential clues to his whereabouts. Upon entering the apartment, detectives found it in disarray, with items scattered across the floor and open closets. Although it initially seemed like Christopher was simply a messy person, Terry knew him to be more organized. The detectives began to suspect that the disarray might be related to a crime. After inspecting the apartment, they decided to expand the search area. They eventually found Christopher's car outside the city limits, about 8 miles from Iron River. Inside the car, they found ordinary clothes and a piece of yellow paper with a route written on it. The route had no specific address, but detailed notes described the path, including turning at a bus stop or driving past a gas station. Terry explained that Christopher, despite living in Iron River, wasn't familiar with the street names, so he wrote down directions in this way. The detectives followed the route, which led them to a house in a neighboring town. Upon knocking on the door, they met Jason Cochran, an overweight man, and his wife Kelly. The officers informed the couple that they were investigating Christopher's disappearance and found a piece of paper with their address in his abandoned car. Kelly revealed that she worked with Christopher at the same plant, and they were friends. Although Kelly hadn't been in contact with Christopher recently, she had tried to reach him via text messages in mid-October. She assumed he had started his new job in North Carolina and didn't respond. Kelly also mentioned Christopher's health issues, which might have led him to start anew. The investigators were puzzled by the route leading to the Cochran home and why it was in Christopher's car. Despite the lack of answers, the couple cooperated with the investigation. After further questioning, the detectives left the Cochran home and proceeded to interview Christopher's co-workers at the factory. There, they discovered that Christopher was having an affair with Kelly Cochran, which had been rumored for months. The investigation into Christopher's disappearance sparked a new lead when Kelly Cochran made a surprising statement. Investigators decided to re-question Kelly and her husband Jason to get to the bottom of their relationship. Kelly eventually admitted to having an affair with Christopher, but initially withheld the information because of her husband's presence. Kelly claimed that she and Jason had an open relationship and Jason was okay with her infidelity. However, Christopher's co-workers disputed this, saying that Jason did not approve of the affair and that the Cochran family did not have an open relationship. When Jason was questioned, he revealed that he was strongly opposed to his wife's infidelity, making him a suspect. However, the lack of concrete evidence meant that the investigators couldn't conclude that he was involved in Christopher's disappearance. Kelly and Jason were released from the police station, and the investigation continued for 5 months without a breakthrough. A new investigator, Detective Jeremy Ogden, took over the case and began a thorough analysis of the Cochran family's history. Kelly and Jason had met in high school and started living together after graduation. Despite their personality differences, they got married and started a swimming pool maintenance business. Jason handled most of the work, but the physical demands took a toll on his health, leaving him with back problems. When Jason's condition worsened, Kelly took over the business. During this time, Kelly sought ways to help her husband recover, including finding a medicinal plant that could help alleviate his back pain. However, the plant was banned in their state, so they moved to Michigan in 2014 to access it. In Michigan, Kelly and Jason got jobs at the same plant where Christopher worked. Kelly and Christopher became close friends, which was important to him given his relationship troubles with Terry. The prosecutors eventually obtained a search warrant for the Cochrans' home, but the search yielded no evidence linking them to Christopher's disappearance. The only significant find was a book written by Jason under a pseudonym inspired by video games. The title of the book caught their attention, but its content was disturbing. The book described violent murder scenes targeting everyone who had ever wronged Jason. The detectives read it thoroughly and found a character that matched Christopher's profile exactly. This strengthened their suspicions about Jason, making them wonder if he wasn't making up the crimes, but instead drawing inspiration from real events he had committed. 3 weeks later, the police decided to conduct another search of the Cochran house, hoping to find evidence they might have missed the first time. However, when they arrived, they found the house empty and the family had moved to Indiana. This made the investigators anxious, as they feared they might not find the crucial evidence they had been searching for months, particularly DNA samples from the suspects. Michigan police contacted their Indiana counterparts to help collect DNA samples from the Cochrans. The Indiana police officers went to the Cochrans' new home, and Jason and Kelly did not object to the procedure, as there was no concrete evidence linking them to the murder. Time passed, and on February 22, 2016, Kelly called the police, frantic, saying her husband Jason was unresponsive. When the rescue team arrived, they found Kelly in a panic, trying to obstruct the doctors. Jason was sitting in a chair, his face severely burned as if from extreme overheating. The doctors confirmed his death, and the body was sent for forensic examination. During the search of the Cochran's new home, an officer discovered a syringe needle near the bed. The forensic report revealed that Jason's death was not due to drug abuse, as initially suspected, but rather strangulation, confirmed by bruises on his neck and face. This discovery turned Jason, the prime suspect in Christopher's kidnapping, into a victim himself. The investigation became even more complex, and forensic experts shifted their focus to Kelly Cochran, who now became the prime suspect in both Christopher's disappearance and her husband's murder. Kelly was invited to the police station to testify in Jason's murder case. During the interrogation, the investigators asked her directly if she had administered excessive doses of illegal drugs to her husband or was involved in his death. However, despite the pressure, Kelly did not confess to either crime. Months later, the investigators still lacked concrete evidence to prove Kelly's guilt and justify an arrest. During the investigation, Detective Jeremy Ogden met Walter Hammerman, a close friend of Jason's, who insisted that illegal drugs could not have caused Jason's death, as he knew his friend well and would have been informed about any changes in his life. Jason had been using medicinal herbs to alleviate his chronic back pain. However, his friend Walter noticed a significant change in his behavior around March last year. Jason confided in Walter about the mounting pressure from the Iron River police, who suspected him and his wife Kelly of involvement in a man's disappearance. The ordeal had taken a toll on Jason, leaving him depressed and even suicidal, which required intensive treatment. Walter observed that Kelly had begun to exert more control over Jason's life, making him increasingly anxious and withdrawn. Jason would avoid social gatherings when Kelly was around, and their video game sessions had become a thing of the past. These observations proved crucial in the investigation, helping detectives understand the dynamics within the Cochran family. After the medical examiner determined that Jason's death was by strangulation, Detective Ogden devised a plan to lure Kelly into a trap. The plan involved using Walter as bait to prompt Kelly into making a mistake. Walter agreed to play along, and on March 12, 2016, he called Kelly under police surveillance. He pretended that Jason had given him a letter containing vital information, which Kelly was supposed to send to the police if anything happened to Jason. However, Kelly suddenly told Walter to drop the idea, catching both him and the police off guard. Despite this, detectives still lacked concrete evidence, and Kelly continued to deny her involvement during subsequent interrogations. On April 26, 2016, Kelly seemingly evaded the authorities, prompting a federal manhunt. Walter, who had cooperated with the police, was shocked and fearful that Kelly might evade justice and potentially target him. The police eventually tracked Kelly's phone to the West Coast, and on April 28th, they arrested her at her cousin's home in Wingo, Kentucky. Once in custody, Kelly confessed to her relationship with Christopher Rain, revealing that she had wanted to leave her husband and start a new life with him. However, when Jason discovered her infidelity, their situation escalated, and Kelly was bound by a pact they had made on their wedding night, obliging her to kill her lover if her cheating was exposed. Kelly Cochran claimed she never intended to follow through on an agreement she made with her husband, Jason, but he was determined to see it through. The agreement was a threat to kill Christopher Rain, Kelly's lover, if she didn't end the affair. Kelly didn't want to do it, but she ultimately helped Jason commit the crime. On October 14, 2015, Christopher arrived at Kelly's house while her husband was away. Kelly offered him dinner and intimacy, and they went upstairs to the bedroom. However, Jason suddenly appeared, panicked and holding a rifle. Without hesitation, he shot Christopher in the head, killing him instantly. Under Jason's direction, Kelly helped dismember Christopher's body using a hacksaw, detaching his limbs and head from his torso. They placed the remains in trash bags and dumped them in the woods near Crystal Falls. They also drove Christopher's car away from the house to avoid suspicion and thoroughly cleaned the house to remove evidence of the crime. Kelly later confessed to her role in the crime, saying she wanted revenge against Jason for forcing her to end her affair with Christopher. She was deeply in love with Christopher and felt Jason had deprived her of happiness. Months later, on February 22, 2016, Kelly killed Jason by suffocating him after giving him a lethal dose of medication. She then helped the police find Christopher's remains, which were buried in the woods near Crystal Falls. A team of investigators and a canine unit searched the area and eventually found a human skull with a bullet hole, confirming it was Christopher's severed head. A .22 caliber bullet, a broken gun, and glasses likely belonging to Reagan were found at the scene. Dental records were used to identify the victim's remains, finally solving the 2-year-old missing person case. In April 2016, Kelly Cochran was formally charged with the murders of Christopher Regan and Jason Cochran. On February 13, 2017, the 34-year-old was arraigned in Michigan State Court. The prosecutor argued that Kelly was the mastermind behind both crimes and that her motive was rage and jealousy. Christopher viewed their relationship as casual, but Kelly genuinely loved him and wanted a future together. When Christopher refused to commit, Kelly decided to kill him, making up a story about a pact with her husband. The prosecution had strong evidence, including Kelly's confession in court. However, Kelly claimed she was being abused by her jealous husband, who had planned and committed the crime. She said he hid in the basement, caught the lovers off guard, and then shot Christopher in a rage. Kelly claimed Jason suggested dismembering the body and coerced her into helping by threatening to kill her. This version raised doubts about Kelly's guilt, but the jury still found her guilty of premeditated murder. Kelly was sentenced to life without parole. Jason Cochran's case was settled with a plea agreement, and Kelly received an additional 65 years in prison. Kelly was sent to Crown Point Correctional Facility in Michigan, where she is serving her sentence and regrets that her personal life didn't work out. In a phone interview, Kelly said, "I tried to do what I thought was right. I got married." She also shared, "It was good in the beginning, but in the end, all my efforts were in vain. All I did was work while my husband played computer games." In prison, Kelly continues to reveal details of her crimes, claiming she and Jason committed more crimes and that Christopher was just one of their many victims. However, Kelly's claims are difficult to verify, and there is no concrete evidence to support them. Her brother has also heard similar claims, but there is no evidence to back them up. Detective Jeremy Ogden is investigating the details, hoping to find evidence of other possible crimes committed by Kelly and Jason Cochran. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Christy Shawn. Christy Maria Shawn Cody was born on September 3, 1976, in Madrid, Spain, to American military parents. Due to her father's duties as a U.S. Air Force soldier, the family frequently relocated, following him to various European countries before eventually returning to the United States. Shawn began her education in New Orleans, Louisiana, but the family soon moved to Texas, then Illinois, and later spent several years in Latin American countries. Although this nomadic lifestyle presented challenges, it also allowed her to develop valuable skills, such as speaking multiple languages and experiencing different cultures. However, during her teenage years, Shawn struggled to adjust to new environments, make friends, and settle into new social circles. Just as she would start to feel comfortable, the family would move again, requiring her to adapt to new schools and peer groups. Despite these challenges, Shawn developed strong communication skills, which enabled her to quickly find common ground with diverse people. She was known for being a sweet, sociable, and charming young woman. In addition to her social skills, Shawn was also actively involved in sports from an early age, participating in gymnastics, swimming, and kickboxing classes for a time. When Christy finished school, her family moved to Beloit, Mississippi, where her father had retired from the military. It was here that she formed lasting friendships and discovered a passion for cooking. She experimented with various recipes, honing her culinary skills and earning praise for her creations. This led her to pursue formal culinary training, completing courses to further develop her talent. While her parents expected her to become a professional chef, Christy also discovered an aptitude for acting. She enrolled in an acting academy in Los Angeles, seizing every opportunity that came her way. She appeared in commercials, performed on stage, and worked as an extra or stunt performer in several high-profile productions. After graduating from the academy in 2000, Christy had yet to land a significant role. Despite her talents and striking appearance, she shifted her focus to her culinary skills and sports, turning these passions into a successful business. Christy is a strong advocate for a healthy lifestyle, offering advice on proper nutrition and developing her own exercise routines to maintain physical fitness. About a year after her TV debut, she founded a successful catering company that provides banquet services and retails prepared culinary products. Her business stands out for its focus on healthy eating and features her own original recipes. Christy's next goal is to start her own farm, which will grow healthy and environmentally friendly produce. This will enable her to expand her catering business while promoting sustainable practices. In addition, she conducts online courses on proper nutrition and develops other projects, further establishing herself as a prominent figure in the culinary industry. In 2012, Christy had a fateful encounter on TV when she met Joseph Timothy Cody, a casting director known as JT, at a studio in Los Angeles. At the time, Christy was auditioning for a culinary show, and JT was responsible for selecting participants and actors for various high-rated projects. There was an instant connection between them. Despite being nearly 7 years older than Christy and in the process of getting a divorce, JT was captivated by her beauty and charisma. He began to pursue her, and Christy was receptive to his advances. Soon, they started a romantic relationship. Joseph and his partner Christy shared a dream of building a life together in North Carolina. They left Los Angeles, selling their businesses and home, and invested in a large plot of land in Leicester. They bought a spacious house and nearly 1-acre property where Christy focused on her blog about healthy nutrition and lifestyle, and Joseph continued to work with TV channels remotely. Their relationship was filled with harmony, and in August 2014, they had a grand wedding attended by hundreds of guests. 3 months later, they were overjoyed to discover they were expecting their first child. They learned they were having a daughter during a routine ultrasound examination and chose to name her Skylar. Everything seemed perfect, but their happiness was short-lived. Christy's mother, who lived out of state, regularly called her to update on her life. However, on March 13, 2015, Christy's mother couldn't reach her, but didn't think much of it. The next day, neither Christy nor Joseph answered their phones. By March 15th, both phones were turned off, which alarmed Christy's mother. She asked a close friend, Cecily, who lived nearby, to check on the couple. Cecily found the cars parked outside, but the front door was locked, and no one responded to her knocks and shouts. She saw the couple's dogs locked in a room through a window and noticed the back door lock had been broken. She immediately called Christy's mother, who then contacted the police. The responding officers found signs of a break-in at the back door and disarray inside the house. Valuables were stolen, including a jewelry box and a breached safe in the bedroom. However, there was no evidence of a struggle, bloodshed, or forced detention. The perpetrator seemed to have taken great care to leave no fingerprints or DNA traces. The relatives held out hope that Joseph and Christy might still be alive, but experienced officers were not optimistic. The investigation struggled to make progress, with no significant clues or evidence found. The missing couple appeared to have no enemies, making it difficult to piece together what had happened. The police decided to question the neighbors to see if they had noticed anything unusual recently. A crucial detail emerged during the investigation into the disappearance of Christy and Joseph Cody. A neighbor reported seeing another local resident, later identified as 36-year-old Robert Jason Owens, throwing a large bundle into a trash bin near the Cody's home on the morning of March 15th. Although the trash had already been taken to the dump, the police wanted to speak with Owens, who was a handyman and friend of the couple. Upon questioning, Owens initially denied any involvement in the couple's disappearance and claimed ignorance about the bundle. However, the situation changed dramatically when the bundle was found at the landfill, containing items from the missing couple's home, including Owens' fingerprints and DNA traces on partially burnt clothing stained with blood. A search of Owens' home revealed charred human skeletal remains in his wood stove, incriminating him in the brutal elimination of his neighbor and his pregnant wife. Despite his initial denials, Owens eventually confessed to the crime after several hours of questioning. According to Owens, the incident occurred on the evening of March 12th, when he visited the Cody's home after getting stuck in the mud. He claimed that while trying to get his car out, he accidentally struck and ran over the couple while sitting in the driver's seat. Panicked, he decided not to call the police and instead covered up the incident. Owens claimed that he broke into the Cody's house, took blankets to move the bodies, and then dismembered them in his own bathroom. He proceeded to burn the body parts in his stove, but packed the blood-soaked clothing, blankets, and footwear into a trash bag and disposed of them in a dumpster. The police were shocked by Owens' cruel actions and eerie calmness when recounting the events. Forensic analysis confirmed that the bone fragments found in Owens' stove belonged to the missing couple. Robert, a man with no family and little contact with relatives, moved to Leicester in 2000 after buying land and building a house. However, his name became linked to a 15-year-old unsolved crime in Asheville, where he previously lived. The crime involved his close friend Zeb Wayne Quinn, who vanished mysteriously at the age of 18. Zeb and Robert had been friends since school and lived nearby. Zeb was undergoing military training and worked part-time at Walmart. On January 2, 2000, Zeb finished his shift and met with Robert, planning to drive to Leicester to buy a new car. However, he never returned home. A few days later, Zeb's car was found parked in another part of town with its headlights on and a heart drawn on the window with red lipstick. The car had damage and scratches with paint particles from another vehicle. Robert, who was the last person to see Zeb, told an implausible story. According to Robert, Zeb asked him to stop the car to make a phone call, saying he received an urgent message on his pager. Zeb drove off to a gas station, returned 10 minutes later looking frantic, and changed their plans. He then drove off in an unknown direction, hitting Robert's car in the process. However, Robert's car also had damage with paint particles from Zeb's car, raising suspicions about his involvement in Zeb's disappearance. Zeb Quinn had been romantically involved with Misty Taylor, who previously dated Wesley Smith. Smith had threatened Zeb, warning him to stay away from Misty or face harm. Although Zeb, Smith, and Owens were questioned, they were released due to lack of evidence. Misty and Smith had alibis, but Robert did not. A large sum of money Zeb had been carrying to buy a car vanished from his car and pager. The investigation suggested that Zeb never received a mysterious message, if any. A strange incident occurred the day after Zeb's disappearance. Someone claiming to be Zeb called Walmart, saying he would be absent from work for a few days due to illness. However, the colleague who answered the call thought the voice sounded unfamiliar, not like Zeb's. The call was traced back to a Volvo plant where Robert worked. When questioned, Owens unexpectedly claimed he made the call at his friend's request the night before Zeb disappeared. Despite further investigation, no new evidence or witnesses were found, and the case remains unsolved, with Zeb Quinn still listed as missing. 15 years after the events, Owens was questioned again, suspected of being involved in his friend Zeb Quinn's disappearance. The case was reopened in June 2015, and the investigation resumed. Although Owens stuck to his original story, the police searched his property thoroughly and found something unusual. In a concrete slab on Owens' property, they discovered a hidden cavity containing small, heavily charred human bone fragments. Unfortunately, the remains were too damaged for DNA analysis, so it was impossible to confirm whether they belonged to Quinn. A neighbor's statement added another surprising detail. An elderly man recalled an incident from January 2000 when Owens had just bought the land and was building his house. One evening, Owens started a fire that emitted a sickly, sweet, nauseating smell, which the neighbor found unbearable due to the wind blowing the stench in his direction. After covering the fire pit with concrete, which raised suspicions, Robert Owens claimed he intended to build a small fountain, but never did. 15 years later, the police arrived at the property, and Owens confessed to a crime, offering a new explanation. He stated that his uncle, Walter Owens, had murdered Misty's boyfriend, Zeb, at the request of Wesley Smith, who was still in love with Misty. Robert claimed he was unaware of the plan at the time and was only asked by his uncle to lure Zeb to a secluded area. According to Robert, his uncle had ordered them to stop their cars in a wooded area and then had Zeb exit his vehicle. Walter then shot Zeb silently and instructed Robert to help dismember and package the body. The body was burned on Robert's property that night and encased in concrete. However, it was not possible to question Walter Owens, as he had died several years prior to Robert's confession. The police found no evidence at the alleged crime scene, and Robert's story seemed unconvincing. He was charged with multiple crimes, including first-degree murder, murder of an unborn child, dismemberment, concealment of evidence, burglary, and robbery, which could have led to the death penalty. The defendant's lawyer argued that their client's depression and mental disorders, which required powerful medication, contributed to their actions. This defense strategy could have led to the defendant being found not guilty by reason of insanity and sent to a psychiatric hospital instead of prison. However, the prosecution and the victim's relatives were not satisfied with this possibility. Meanwhile, the investigation into Quinn's case was ongoing, which could have also resulted in the defendant avoiding punishment. In 2017, the defendant accepted a plea deal, pleading guilty to the murders of the Codes in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. As a result, they were convicted of second-degree manslaughter, as well as several other crimes including dismemberment, incineration of bodies, burglary, and robbery. Owens was sentenced to 59 years in prison. In 2022, he reached another plea deal with authorities, this time related to Quinn's case. Although he only admitted to being an accomplice to murder and helping to conceal evidence, he received an additional 12-year sentence, effectively extending his life sentence. After sentencing, Owens spoke to the court, asking the families of his victims for forgiveness. Despite this, he maintained his innocence, blaming an accident and his mental disorder, which he claimed was exacerbated by strong medication. However, the families of Christe and Joseph Coed, as well as Quinn's family, remained unconvinced. They rejected the notion of unintentional murder, believing that Owens acted deliberately and with selfish motives in both cases. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jared Bridegan. Jared Bridegan was born in 1989 in Florida to a modest family as the second of two sons. He and his older brother Adam were close from a young age and grew up together. Their parents were devoted members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. As a teenager, Jared met Mallory Bowden at church and they developed a romantic relationship. She would later call him her first true love. However, their religious beliefs discouraged cohabitation before marriage, so when Jared graduated from high school in 2007, they went their separate ways. He moved to Utah to attend college. In 2009, at the age of 20, Jared met his future first wife, Shannon Gardner, at a friend's birthday party. She was 2 years older than him and came from a wealthy family. Shannon Gardner was born in 1987 to Starling and Shelley Gardner, founders of Stampin' Up!, a successful company that produced and sold craft items. By 2010, the family business, based in Salt Lake City, generated $100 million in annual revenue. Shannon's sister, Sarah, holds a management position in the company. As a member of a wealthy family, Shannon grew up with luxuries and never had to work as a chef, despite being trained in the profession. After meeting her partner, they got engaged just a few months later and married in a lavish ceremony in Salt Lake City in early 2010, with her family covering all expenses. Their religious beliefs, which discouraged cohabitation and long engagements, influenced their quick decision to marry. After the wedding, they settled in Utah, where Shannon's parents helped them buy a comfortable home worth around $1 million. They, Shannon and Jared, traveled extensively, sharing their luxurious lifestyle on social media. They received significant financial support from Shannon's parents, who gave them around $10,000 monthly and allowed them to use their accounts freely. After Jared graduated, his in-laws gave him $100,000 to start his own business. In 2013, they had twins, Abigail and Liam, and initially moved to Connecticut. However, when Liam was diagnosed with a heart condition and lung issues, they relocated to Florida, following doctors' advice that the sea air would be beneficial for his health. They bought a comfortable 2-story home near the coast in Ponte Vedra Beach. Shannon managed a popular blog, presenting herself as a devoted wife, caring mother, chef, and fitness enthusiast who loved travel and sports. She regularly visited the gym, prompting Jared to surprise her by hiring a personal trainer. After moving, their marriage began to fall apart, and they soon found themselves in the midst of a scandalous divorce. Despite their efforts to put on a brave face, it was clear that their relationship was troubled. One of the main sources of tension was their differing levels of commitment to their religion. Shannon had grown disillusioned with their faith and stopped attending church, while her husband remained a devout follower. This disparity led to arguments, misunderstandings, and ultimately to the breakdown of their marriage. Shannon grew unhappy with Jared, feeling he was lazy, had gained weight, and wasn't putting enough effort into his business despite taking online courses. However, Jared eventually got a job at Microsoft and worked his way up to a senior manager role. Despite this success, the couple grew apart and started arguing frequently. Things took a turn for the worse when Jared found out about intimate messages between Shannon and her personal fitness trainer. Although Shannon denied having an affair, the trainer admitted to it in a conversation with Jared. Jared then reached out to Meller Bowden, saying his wife had become distant and emotionally attached to her trainer, but he was willing to forgive her and save their family for the sake of their children. In 2015, after almost 6 years of marriage, the couple started a bitter and dramatic divorce process. They fought over their shared assets and custody rights for their children, with Jared accusing Shannon of infidelity, which she denied, saying the marriage had simply lost its spark. Shannon retaliated by accusing Jared of being cruel and offensive. Shannon and Jared disagreed on how to divide their assets, including their home, cars, and bank accounts. Shannon claimed that most of what they had was given to her by her parents or purchased with their money, since Jared had only recently started working. Jared argued that he was entitled to at least half of their Florida home. The couple also disputed custody of their twins. Shannon accused Jared of trying to manipulate the children against her when he spent time with them, allegedly coaching them on what to say about her and recording their statements to use in court. In response, Jared accused Shannon of invading his privacy by installing hidden cameras in their home, tapping his phone calls, and tracking his movements with a GPS device in his car. Shannon sought full custody of the children and ownership of their seaside home. She claimed Jared threatened to use their children's trust funds for himself. Jared countered by accusing Shanana of tax evasion, alleging that she worked off the books at her parents' company and received large sums of money. After their divorce, Jared and Shannon continued to argue in court for nearly 7 years, despite having shared custody of their children. During this time, they both started new families and had more kids. Jared met Christina, a co-worker at Microsoft, in 2016. At first, their relationship was professional, but they eventually became romantically involved. Christina moved to Florida to be with Jared, and they got married in the fall of 2017. They had their first child, a daughter named Bexley, in February 2019, and their son London was born in August 2021. Shanana got married again in 2018 to Mario Fernandez, a real estate businessman who was 1 year younger than her. They had a son named Michael that same year. The family lived in the same house where Shanana used to live with her first husband, Jared, which was a point of contention during their court battles. Despite the new families, the conflicts between Jared and Shanana did not subside, and they continued to file lawsuits against each other with new demands. Jared wanted to restrict Mario's access to the twins when Shanana was not around, while he wanted his new wife, Christina, to play a bigger role in raising his older children. The last court hearing between Jared and Shanana, which took place 4 months before Jared's death, was extremely tense. They made more accusations against each other and fought over their property rights. Shanana claimed that Jared was preventing her from using the family's more comfortable vehicle to transport the children because he was more concerned with embarrassing her than with their convenience and safety. After the court granted Shanana exclusive rights to the larger vehicle and ordered Jared to pay her $600 in compensation, they established a routine for their children's care. As part of this agreement, Jared picked up their twins on Wednesdays for a family dinner, which often included their younger sister Bexley. Christina sometimes joined them, but after having her baby, London, she prioritized spending time with him and avoided leaving him with babysitters. On Wednesday, February 22, 2022, Jared followed this routine, taking the children to Coastal Cafe after picking them up. After dinner and a walk, he dropped the twins back at their mother's house and headed home, taking his usual 40-minute route. This route included a stretch of road without streetlights that was quite deserted. As he drove cautiously, aware of his 3-year-old daughter sleeping in her car seat, he encountered an unexpected obstacle around 9 p.m. when the sun had set. Suddenly, in the headlights, he spotted a tire lying in his lane. Jared stopped his car to move a tire that was in the road, so he turned on his hazard lights and got out of the vehicle. That's when someone started shooting at him. The attacker was very close and shot Jared multiple times with deadly accuracy before running away. Luckily, the child who was sleeping in the car was not hurt. A person who was nearby heard the shots and carefully approached the scene. They found Jared lying on the ground, bleeding badly. They immediately called the police and ambulance, but unfortunately, it was too late to save Jared. Christina, Jared's wife, had spoken to him just minutes before the attack. He told her he had just dropped off their kids and would be home in about 15 minutes. But when 30 minutes passed, then an hour, and Jared didn't come home, Christina started to worry. She tried calling him again, but this time, a police officer answered and told her what had happened. The officer asked Christina to come to the police station in Jacksonville Beach right away. The investigation at the scene revealed that a tire on the road caused Jared's vehicle to stop. After getting out to remove the tire, he was shot. Fortunately, his 3-year-old daughter, who was sleeping in the car, was unharmed, suggesting she was not the shooter's target. The absence of stolen valuables, including a wallet with cash, phone, and tablet, ruled out robbery as a motive. When questioned about potential enemies, Christina mentioned Jared's first wife, Shannon, but declined to make accusations without solid evidence. Unfortunately, there was no surveillance footage due to the lack of cameras in the area. A witness reported hearing the shots, which broke the night's silence. followed by the sound of a vehicle speeding away, although nothing was visible in the darkness. Christina's hint that Shauna might be involved in the crime seemed reasonable at first, but detectives doubted she was directly responsible, given her strong alibi. She was at home with her husband, their twins, younger son, and visiting parents at the time of the incident. Instead, the police focused on reviewing nearby surveillance footage. The cameras showed an old dark blue Ford F-150 with brown trim entering the area about 15 minutes before the incident and reappearing a few minutes after the witness reported the shots. The police asked the public for help in identifying the suspicious vehicle. Jared's family made TV appeals, urging anyone with information, no matter how small, to come forward. The first suspect was arrested, but Shauna and her current husband Mario repeatedly denied any involvement in the murder when questioned by detectives. Shauna openly admitted that her relationship with her ex-husband was complex, but insisted she would never wish harm on the father of her children. In media interviews, she shared how her 9-year-old twins reacted to the news of their father's death. Abigail cried uncontrollably for hours, while Liam was in shock and remained silent for a long time. It's notable that neither Jared's ex-spouse nor his older children attended his funeral. This was because Christina had made it clear to Shanana that she was not welcome at the ceremony, and Shanana had countered that if she couldn't attend, the twins wouldn't go to the burial either. Almost a year after Mr. Brand's murder, the first suspect was finally arrested in January 2023. The police had been secretive about their investigation, only disclosing that it required significant resources and effort. However, their persistence paid off when the dark blue Ford F-150 was involved in an accident and fled the scene before the police arrived. This breakthrough led to an arrest. The police chief and city prosecutor announced that 62-year-old Henry Tienon, an unemployed man with a criminal record, had been charged with several crimes, including second-degree premeditated murder, participating in a conspiracy to commit murder, and setting up an ambush that obstructed the victim. Tienon, hoping to receive a lighter sentence, agreed to cooperate with law enforcement and provide information about the crime. As a result, the criminal partnership began to fall apart, and news soon spread that Tienon had been renting a house with a friend owned by Mario Fernandez. After Tienon pleaded guilty and agreed to testify against Mario, Mario was arrested. There were rumors that Shanana, Mario's wife and Tienon's former lover, was the mastermind behind the murder, allegedly motivated by her long-standing dislike for her then-husband. Despite strongly denying all accusations, Shanana eventually left town, relocating to Washington with her 3 children, just a few months after her husband's arrest. Shanana Gardner Fernandez was arrested on August 17, 2023, at her Washington apartment on the same charges as her current husband. She was extradited to Florida to stand trial with her co-defendants. Her alleged motive was to avoid sharing custody of her 2 children with her ex-husband and to gain control of disputed assets due to complicated relationships. The legal case is ongoing, and all defendants are currently facing legal proceedings. Shanana's husband, Tienon, has pleaded guilty to all charges and is cooperating with the investigation in hopes of receiving a lighter sentence. He is likely to face a minimum of 15 years in prison, which may be equivalent to a life sentence given his age. Mario Fernandez has partially admitted his guilt, but is refusing to testify against his wife, exercising his legal rights. Shanana Gardner Fernandez, however, denies all charges against her. Despite this, prosecutors are seeking the death penalty or life imprisonment without parole. Shanna's children are being taken care of by their grandparents, Starling and Shelley Gardner, as well as her sister, Sarah. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Sumner family. James and Carol Alford, also known as Reggie and Sunar, grew up together in Charleston, South Carolina. They were the same age, attended the same school, and were in the same grade. As they grew older, their childhood friendship blossomed into romance. By the time they were 15, they had started dating and were inseparable. Their friends thought they made a beautiful couple, and James and Carol kept photos of their happy early years in their archives. They dreamed of a long, happy life together and planned to get married as soon as they turned 18. Their parents approved of their relationship and supported their decision. However, their plans were put on hold when James was called up for military service in the Army. They decided to postpone their wedding until his return and exchanged regular letters. But as time passed, James was sent to Vietnam, and contact with him was lost. Carol didn't know if he was alive, as he stopped writing to her. Carol continued her studies and got a job at the Charleston Air Force Base. She married twice, first in the late 1960s, but that marriage ended quickly and she had no children. In 1975, she married Richard Alford, with whom she had a daughter, Rhonda, in 1977. But her second marriage was also troubled, as her husband abused her and their daughter. In the mid-1980s, Carol could no longer tolerate the abuse and filed for divorce, taking her daughter with her. But Richard continued to harass her, trying to ruin her life. In 1987, he attacked her, shooting her several times in front of their 10-year-old daughter. Carol was lucky to survive, thanks to her neighbors who called for help. She underwent multiple surgeries, blood transfusions, and eventually recovered, although she lost sight in one eye and was left disabled. Her health began to deteriorate again in the late 1990s, and after a series of tests, she was diagnosed with liver cancer. In 1987, Carol's life was in danger due to medical complications, and she unknowingly contracted the hepatitis C virus. Over time, the virus damaged her liver, leading to cancer. Fortunately, with proper treatment and therapy, her condition stabilized. However, she had to take daily medications and undergo regular checkups for the rest of her life. The hepatitis C diagnosis, combined with previous severe gunshot wounds, made it impossible for her to work physically demanding jobs. She eventually found work as a call center operator. Meanwhile, James, her high school sweetheart, had a traumatic experience in Vietnam. He was severely wounded and mistakenly reported dead. He survived and returned home, but lost contact with Carol. Years later, James married, but the marriage ended and he was left alone, struggling with chronic health issues. In 2000, Carol received a call at work from a familiar voice, James. She was hesitant to believe it was really him, as she thought he had died in the war. The two cried and reminisced, eventually agreeing to meet in person. After 38 years apart, they reunited and rekindled their romance. Carol and James started seeing each other daily and soon decided to move in together. They got married 5 months later and lived in the Riverland Terrace neighborhood of Charleston, South Carolina. Despite their health issues, they were happy and took care of each other. They lived near the Cole family, who had their own set of troubles, including Stephen, a Vietnam veteran confined to a wheelchair, and his wife Natalie, who often spent time with friends in bars. Tiffany, the daughter of James's ex, was often left to fend for herself from a young age. She would hang out on the streets with no money, not even for small treats. When James and Carol started living together, Tiffany was still in high school. Carol, being kind-hearted, sympathized with the girl who was unwanted by her own mother. For 5 years, Carol looked out for Tiffany like a daughter, inviting her to family meals, buying her clothes, and giving her money for expenses. In 2004, when the Summers decided to sell their Chevrolet Lumino minivan, Tiffany asked to buy it in installments since she had no money and desperately needed a car. The Summers agreed to sell it to her for a very low price, divided into 12 payments over a year. In early 2005, the Summers were forced to move to Florida due to their deteriorating health. Doctors recommended a warmer climate, so they sold their Charleston home and bought a new one in Jacksonville, along with a Lincoln Town car. They were happy in their new home, making plans for their future. Every day, Carol would call her adult daughter Rhonda, sharing her thoughts and plans. But one day in June 2005, Carol didn't call, and Rhonda couldn't reach her. Rhonda was worried but hoped everything was okay. The next day, there was still no answer. Rhonda called her mother's and James's cell phones every half hour, but they were unavailable and the answering machine remained unanswered. On the third day, Rhonda drove to Florida to check on her mother and stepfather. When she arrived, she noticed the car was missing, the front door was open, and the house was in disarray. There was a table set for dinner, but the food was 3 days old. It looked like the owners had abruptly left in the middle of a meal. Rhonda saw medications, including her mother's cancer pills and James's insulin, on the bedside table. The cell phones were dead. Rhonda realized her mother and stepfather couldn't have left without their medications and phones, so she contacted the police to report the incident. The police put out a wanted list for the Summers car, blocked their bank cards, and began searching for them. The first few days yielded no results, but on June 12th, a man called a bank, claiming to be James Schur, complaining that his card was blocked. This led the police to investigate further. The bank employee became suspicious when checking the card information and offered Mr. Schur to visit the nearest branch to resolve the issue, but he hung up. Shortly after, a woman called from the same number, claiming to be Mrs. Carol Schur, and reported a similar problem with her blocked card. When asked to visit the bank in person, she refused, citing health issues, and asked to regain access to her savings, which was denied. The bank immediately handed over the call recordings and information to the police. When played to Rhonda, the couple's daughter, she confirmed that the voices did not belong to her parents, who were in their 60s, while the callers sounded much younger. The police suspected that the imposters were involved in the couple's disappearance, either holding them captive or killing them after obtaining bank account information. A few days later, the couple's abandoned car was found on a deserted road with no signs of struggle or blood inside. However, hair and sweat marks from both spouses were found in the trunk, suggesting they were taken away in their own car. Further investigation revealed that money had been withdrawn from their accounts after their disappearance, and ATM footage showed a young man making the withdrawals. The police traced the calls made from the imposter's number and found that the SIM card was purchased shortly before the couple's disappearance. A call was made to a car rental company where a Mazda RX-8 was rented under the name Tiffany Cole. The same car was used to withdraw money from the couple's accounts. Using the car's built-in tracking device, the police located the Mazda RX-8 at a hotel in Charleston. A team was sent to apprehend the suspects, who were found celebrating in their hotel room, surrounded by packages and receipts from lavish purchases. The three suspects, Tiffany Cole, Michael J. Jackson, and Alan Lindell Wade, were taken into custody and questioned separately. Initially, they feigned ignorance or remained silent, but after several hours of interrogation and presentation of evidence, Tiffany confessed to robbing the elderly couple and using their stolen money to fund their lifestyle. Tiffany and her new boyfriend stayed overnight at the Summers house, where they were treated to dinner and hospitality. During the meal, Carol Summers mentioned that they had almost $100,000 in savings, which sparked an idea in Tiffany's mind. That night, Tiffany and her boyfriend began making plans to get their hands on the money. They enlisted the help of two accomplices, Bruce and Alan, and started putting their plan into action. On June 6th, Tiffany rented a car while Bruce and Alan stole 4 shovels. Together, they drove to a deserted spot in the woods and began digging a grave for the Summers. On July 8th, Tiffany bought rope and duct tape, which she gave to Bruce and Alan. That evening, they approached the Summers house, pretending to need help and asking to use their phone. Carol, feeling sorry for them, let them in. Once inside, Bruce and Alan attacked the Summers, binding their hands and feet with duct tape and blindfolding them. They questioned the couple about their money and valuables, threatening them with torture and death. The Summers gave in, hoping to spare their lives. As soon as the attackers got the information they needed, 2 more accomplices arrived, helping to drag the Summers out to their car. they drove the car to the woods, with Tiffany and her boyfriend following behind in a second car. In the trunk, James managed to free his arm and remove the duct tape from his and his wife's faces. But it was too late. The car stopped, and the Summers were led to the grave, where they were pushed to their deaths. The elderly couple pleaded for their lives, but the young criminals showed no mercy, brutally killing them by burying them alive. According to Bruce, the perpetrators covered the bound couple with earth for about an hour, during which time the victims cried, confessed their love for each other, and said goodbye. The autopsy later revealed that the couple died of suffocation, with pieces of soil found in their mouths, respiratory tracts, and stomachs. After committing the heinous crime, the criminals abandoned the Lincoln in the woods and returned to town in a rented car. They broke into the Summers house, stealing valuable items, and then returned to South Carolina to spend their loot. However, their celebration was short-lived, as the stolen cards were blocked after 2 days, and all 4 perpetrators were arrested 4 days later. The trial and conviction followed. Bruce Nixon, who had fully admitted his guilt and cooperated with the investigation, was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Tiffany Cole, who claimed she was not directly involved in the murder, was given the death penalty, along with Jackson and Lindell, who had chosen to remain silent. The evidence against them, including Tiffany's involvement in the criminal plan, renting a car, and participating in the grave digging, was overwhelming. The 4 criminals appealed their sentences multiple times, but they were all denied. Although Jackson, Tiffany, and Lindell were sentenced to death, the penalty was never carried out, even 18 years after their atrocious crime. Hello friends. Welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Luz Maria Lopez. Luz Maria Lopez was born on March 17, 1995, in San Cristobal, Verapaz, a small town, to a modest family of A. Morales and Brian Lopez. She was the youngest of 2 children, with an older brother named Omar. In infancy, Luz Maria faced a life-threatening intestinal obstruction that required a complex operation. Despite the doctor's uncertainty, her mother's prayers and faith in her recovery paid off, and the surgery was successful. Fortunately, the early surgery did not affect her development. During her school years, Luz Maria was an active and well-rounded student. She participated in gymnastics, athletics, and classical dance, and was a people person who easily made friends. She also excelled academically, particularly in the humanities. After graduation, Luz Maria decided to pursue higher education at a prestigious state university, where she chose to study law and later specialized in criminalistics, a field that had always fascinated her. When Luz Maria was a student, she accompanied her mother to a car dealership in Coban, the capital of Alta Verapaz, to buy a motorcycle as a 25th birthday gift for her older brother. They met a polite and attentive young consultant named Jorge, who showed them various models and offered recommendations. Although Luz Maria and her mother chose a model, they decided to think it over and consult with the rest of the family before making a decision. Before leaving, Luz Maria gave Jorge her phone number in case they needed further feedback. Shortly after, Jorge called Luz Maria, but instead of discussing the potential purchase, their conversation turned personal. He continued to call her several times before mustering the courage to invite her to a coffee shop. It was clear that he was smitten with the beautiful brunette, but didn't know how to initiate their acquaintance. Luz Maria was immediately drawn to a handsome young man, and when he asked to meet, she agreed. The only potential obstacle was that he was a year younger, but that didn't deter them. A romantic relationship quickly blossomed, and they both felt an intense connection, believing they had found true love. After just a few months, they decided to take the next step and start living together. Despite their parents' disapproval, they pressed on and got married 6 months later. They kept the wedding intimate, inviting only close friends and family. However, the celebration was almost ruined on the wedding day when the banquet venue encountered an unexpected issue. The couple had to pay a significant amount of extra money to salvage the event, but they were eventually able to go ahead with the ceremony as planned. Jorge is a mysterious figure, and there is limited information available about him in the public domain. What is known is that he was born in 1996 in the town of Santa Catalina Latina, Guatemala. Jorge grew up with his brother Pablo in a low-income family, where financial struggles were a constant reality. As a result, the brothers had to make do with the basics and didn't have the luxury of nice clothes or expensive toys. Contrary to what one might expect, Jorge didn't have big aspirations or ambitions. He never made an effort to study or find a good job, and instead, he took things as they came. Those who knew Jorge described him as introverted, uncommunicative, and sometimes aggressive. He struggled with controlling his emotions, which made it difficult for him to form meaningful relationships or connect with the opposite sex. Despite these challenges, Jorge was determined to win the heart of Luz Maria, the love of his life. He went all out to impress her, and once she agreed to marry him, he was in a hurry to seal the deal, fearing she might change her mind. Luz Maria's parents, however, were not convinced about Jorge from the start. They had reservations about their son-in-law, although they couldn't quite put their finger on what bothered them. Despite their misgivings, they couldn't persuade their daughter to reconsider her decision to marry Jorge. After the wedding, the young couple's marriage quickly became unhappy. The wife, Luz Maria, got pregnant, but she couldn't find a good job because she didn't have a university degree and was inexperienced. No employer wanted to hire an expectant mother with no skills, so she had to settle for casual labor. Meanwhile, her husband, Jorge, lost his job and showed no enthusiasm for finding a new one. When their daughter, Alice, was born, the family's financial situation became dire. Both Jorge and Luz Maria were unemployed and struggling to make ends meet. They couldn't even afford to pay rent, buy food, or purchase basic household necessities. Jorge convinced Luz Maria that they had no choice but to move in with his parents temporarily. Luz Maria was initially hesitant, but with a baby to care for and no other options, she eventually agreed. Her mother, was aware of the family's problems and encouraged Luz Maria to return to her childhood home, but Luz Maria insisted that things would improve with Jorge and there was no need to worry. Luz Maria's mother visited her daughter and granddaughter at her son-in-law's parents' house, but was met with a disturbing scene. Luz Maria was in a terrible condition, malnourished from only eating once a day. This was partly due to her in-laws not providing her with sufficient food, as they saw her as unemployed. The situation was even more concerning because Luz Maria was breastfeeding her baby, Alice, so her malnutrition could also harm the child's health. The lack of food was just one of the many problems Luz Maria faced in her in-laws' home. She was constantly humiliated and even physically abused by her husband's younger brother. He was irritated by the baby's crying and the presence of children's belongings in the house. He would lash out at Luz Maria, throwing her child's things at her, and on one occasion, even threw a baby bottle at her, hitting Alice, who was in her mother's arms. Jorge refused to stand up for his wife and daughter, treating them as if they were strangers. His mother-in-law, convinced her daughter to take her granddaughter and move back to her parents' house. However, Jorge soon showed up, asking his wife to return and promising to get a job. She agreed, but only if their children could rent an apartment and live separately from his parents. After Luz Maria defended her diploma, she achieved her long-held dream. She landed a job at the city prosecutor's office, earning the respect of her colleagues with her intelligence, talent, and responsibility. As she advanced in her career, the family's financial situation significantly improved, eventually allowing them to afford a car. This improvement was entirely due to the wife's hard work, frugality, and strong reputation among her superiors. Jorge was a selfish and lazy person who relied on his wife, Luz Maria's income instead of working. He had a bad temper, was abusive, and controlled every aspect of Luz Maria's life. He wouldn't let her have friends, go out with colleagues, or even leave the house without him. He constantly checked her phone and social media, and even forbade her from using them. Jorge's behavior was extremely abusive, and he never stood up for Luz Maria when his relatives humiliated or physically abused her. He also used physical violence against her, treating her like his property. Despite this, Luz Maria repeatedly tried to leave him, but he would beg for forgiveness, and she would give him another chance. On December 15, 2020, after a violent fight, Luz Maria left Jorge and went to her mother's house with their 3-year-old daughter Alice. However, Jorge showed up, promising to change and claiming he had found a new job. Luz Maria believed him again and returned to their apartment. In mid-January 2021, Luz Maria called her mother, complaining about Jorge's broken promises and theft, which had left them in a desperate situation. However, Luz Maria stopped responding to calls and messages, which was unusual behavior for her. Her mother grew concerned and went to her workplace, only to find out that Luz Maria was missing. The police were informed, and a nationwide search effort began, with Jorge as the prime suspect. He denied any involvement, claiming he was also searching for his wife. However, the investigation revealed that Jorge was the last person to see Luz Maria alive, and he was the only suspect in her disappearance. Jorge was outraged and frustrated to be the prime suspect in his wife's disappearance, particularly since his own alibi was inconsistent and unclear. He struggled to explain why he hadn't reported her missing to the police on the day she vanished. If he thought she was at her mother's house, why didn't he call or visit her while the police were searching the area and looking for witnesses? On January 22nd, municipal workers made a gruesome discovery while responding to a call about a clogged storm drain. They found a large plastic bag containing a charred human body. Forensic experts confirmed that the body was that of a young woman. Her parents and brother identified the body as Luz Maria Lopez, despite its severe disfigurement. The body was discovered near the prosecutor's office where Luz Maria worked. Although the area lacked surveillance cameras and lighting, pathologists were able to determine that she had suffered severe beating and died from asphyxia. The evidence included internal hemorrhages, fractures sustained while she was alive, and caked blood particles in her nose and mouth. The investigation revealed that Luz Maria's husband, Jorge, was the prime suspect. A disturbing audio recording, sent anonymously by a neighbor, captured a brutal argument between the couple. The recording revealed Luz Maria's desperate screams and cries for help, as well as faint sobs in the background. Unfortunately, the neighbor who made the recording did not call the police or check on the source of the screams. Luz Maria's mother believes that if the neighbor had acted immediately, her daughter might still be alive. The recording was included in the case files, and Luz Maria's mother gave a powerful interview urging citizens to report incidents of domestic violence to the police rather than simply recording or filming them. Thousands of people protested across the country, demanding justice for Luz Maria. Although Jorge was arrested, he maintained his innocence, claiming he drove his wife to work on the day she vanished. However, security footage showed their car heading towards her workplace, but the tinted windows made it impossible to determine how many people were inside. At the couple's rented home, investigators found washed-out blood traces and drag marks, indicating that the brutal crime likely occurred there. This suspicion was strengthened by the discovery of microscopic fragments of burnt flesh in the trunk of the family car. A recent purchase by the couple, a double orthopedic mattress, caught the investigators' attention. Specifically, it was the dense polyethylene wrapping around the mattress that was significant. Comparative analysis revealed that Jorge had used this wrapping to conceal his wife's burnt remains. Several neighbors reported hearing Jorge threaten and insult his wife just days before her sudden disappearance. They recalled him shouting that he would kill her if she left him, and that he would hide her body where no one could find it. Based on the evidence collected by expert criminologists and witness testimonies, The investigation has reconstructed the horrific events of the crime. On the night of January 19, 2021, Jorge committed the murder, just one day after he and his wife had a violent argument. Jorge had a history of uncontrolled outbursts of anger, but this time he completely lost control. He brutally beat his wife, causing her to scream for help. The neighbors heard her cries but failed to call the police. During the beating, Jorge broke his wife's nose and inflicted a severe head injury. Afterwards, he strangled her with his bare hands and attempted to dispose of the body. To do so, he dragged her into the backyard, poured campfire liquid on her, and set her on fire. However, the intense smoke and smell of burning flesh and hair caught him off guard. The most disturbing aspect of the crime is that Jorge committed these atrocities in front of their 3.5-year-old daughter. Although she may not have fully understood what was happening, she witnessed the beating and murder, which was evident from her cries and screams that were recorded. Jorge, who had a basic understanding of forensic science from his wife's textbooks at home, attempted to cover up the crime and create an alibi. He deliberately chose a dark and secluded area without surveillance cameras to dispose of his wife Maria's body in a drainage sewer, escaping detection. The following morning, Jorge drove to Maria's workplace via their usual route, pretending to have dropped her off as he normally did every morning. Then, he began fabricating a search for his wife, contacting her co-workers, friends, and family. During the trial, Jorge's lawyers employed stall tactics to delay proceedings and discredit the investigation. They argued that all evidence and witness testimony was indirect and that there was no concrete proof to conclusively establish Jorge's guilt. Defense attorneys requested that Jorge's detention be changed to house arrest, citing his deep depression over being accused of killing the woman he loved and the mother of his child. However, crucial evidence came from Maria's phone, which had been in Jorge's possession since the crime. On the first day after the murder, Jorge used Maria's phone to send messages to various people, trying to create the illusion that she was still alive. Analysis of the phone's movements showed it was constantly in the same locations as Jorge's phone. The defense argued that Jorge had found his wife's phone and was driving around the city to search for her, but this claim was weakened by the fact that he had sent messages from her phone and even called it from his own phone. Further evidence of Jorge's guilt included the bruises and scratches on his body, documented by experts in photos, which suggested that the victim had put up a struggle. A notable scratch on his neck was particularly telling. While it was not possible to find Jorge's skin cells under the victim's fingernails due to the fire, the cumulative evidence pointed to his guilt. The prosecutor sought the maximum punishment for the defendant despite several contentious issues in the case. However, the court proceedings were frequently delayed. In October 2022, the defendant was finally convicted of brutally murdering his wife. He received a 50-year prison sentence, still maintaining his innocence. Custody of their young daughter, Alice, was awarded to her maternal grandparents. They expressed that caring for their granddaughter has now become the main purpose of their lives.